just generally speaking, if you're already in a situation where everything's fucked up, right? The thing is, that's everybody.
Yeah, do what Avery did. Call
Like
a
that's,
house meeting and be like, I fucked you guys all over
yeah,
and I wanted to apologize. Because I think as a child, the thing that like screwed with me the most is to see my parents like didn't give a shit to actually change. Like they didn't actually. They would say sorry when they made you feel really fucking bad, and like beat the shit out of you or whatever. But it's like they just do it again next week. You know what I mean? Or do it the next day. And the real point was like no one ever was like, yo, we didn't know how to parent you and we screwed up a lot. It was always like, we did the best we could. We did the best we could. We did the best we could. I was like, I get that, but you're still doing the best you could from what you knew before, but now you know more and you're not changing.
because they don't want to change. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like if I say, I did the best I could, but I screwed up, and then it's like, and
yeah, exactly.
it's like, but they just want to be like, I did the best I could.
I'm just saying I'm sorry that
Instead of I did the best I could,
again,
but I'm gonna change now, and I'm gonna change. Like then it's like, okay, so I have to change. Okay, hold on. And I think that's the biggest issue for everybody is forgiving the past and being honest about it, but then changing. So it's like, I'd rather just not even be honest about it. It's like, I'd rather just not change. And so that's why I'm saying anybody who's in a situation where it's like, you already feel like everything's all fucked up. It's like, that's the world. That's everything. So, in response to your point about the 50-50 thing, Jess, it's like, just because everything's screwed up, applying a less than best solution is not going to make it better. And the reality is, it's not like suddenly somebody's wanting things to be 50-50. It's always been that way. You know what I mean? And the 50-50 thing is like not wanting to take full responsibility and participating in fear and focusing on what you don't want.
Wait, are you guys saying that is the okay, we were talking about the context of parents who already have kids who've grown up at least a bit. They could be 5, they could be 8, they could be 13, they could be 16, whatever. And the problems that came with how they raised them before, attributing it to the fact that the parents tried to do everything 50-50? Or is it just like, realistically speaking, it was just...
Or then even like, okay, you get exposed to everything we're saying and we're talking about, and then you're like, well, because, I mean, like we just got off that parenting call, right? And I was saying, you got to drop the 50-50 thing. It's got to be 100%, 100%. Because think about it. What does 50-50 add up to?
25%.
That's like 1 + 1 = 1.
Whoa.
Do you see what I'm saying? Meaning versus 1 + 1 = 2, 200%. So it's like if the mother, let's call it the mother, focuses on the kids and the home environment and all of that 100%, then what's that environment going to be like?
Amazing.
You see what I mean? If the father focuses on, in the context of where things are at in this world, making money, creating.
Everybody here watched The Office, right? You know when Jim and Michael, they become co-managers, and Oscar's like, oh, perfect. Like, name me one ship that didn't have 2 captains.
Yeah.
Right? One country didn't have 2 presidents or prime ministers. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's it. It's like, at the end of the day, when it comes to the kids, my role is, if Katie's doing something and I see allowing her emotions or something to influence a decision, then I'm like, hey, no, stop. Versus she's like, well, I've decided to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, no, I need to know everything about it and let me make the decision and everything. It's like, no, she's made the decision. Now, if I can see there's an emotional point, if I can see that, and I also am not having an emotional point, then it's like my responsibility to say like, wait, hold on a second. But I'm not trying to have an equal say in that. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the thing is, it's going to challenge a lot of the feminists and all that stuff. But it's like, I think a lot of that comes from the women don't know how to raise their kids and build a family and a home and all that stuff. So it even at an unconscious or subconscious level, it seems totally impossible and daunting. Plus everyone's been programmed that that's just not that important, you know? And it's like, there's a responsibility that's implied with having kids. It's like
Yeah.
anything, you know?
Yeah. It's the value point that we've emphasized on monetary things. So we no longer value that home environment being great. We no longer value the kids' development at an early age. We value the moms bringing money in, and we see that as more important than raising the children and having a good home environment and taking care of all of that. Like, it's women don't see that of value anymore. They literally can't like justify themselves staying home and doing that. They think I'm worthless if I just did that, and I wouldn't be actually adding value to the family, when it's quite the opposite, actually.
But it's like if somebody was like, well, I'm just going to be a painter the rest of my life and not even make any money, and they don't even know how to paint. They're not going to be able to see themselves doing it and enjoying it. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I observe what Katie's doing, so I can speak from that perspective, but also building a business. Okay. Building a business is a lot like having a child, because if you don't give it constant attention, it starts to become dysfunctional, you know. Plus, just giving it attention isn't enough either. You have to give it the right attention in the right way and so forth, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much overlap in terms of the way you would approach it, you know. And running a business, like, you kind of have to have your eye on a lot of different things, you know. You have to be aware of lots of different points. The same thing with building a house and everything. Now, there's a difference between building a business and managing a business, you know. Those are two different things. And that's why, you know, Avery's talked about this too, and I agree with him. It's like, and I just say Avery because that way someone can be mad at him for saying it, not me. But my point is, he's like, women are really good at managing businesses, but not so much building it. And that doesn't mean there's no woman who's good at building a business. You have to be clear when I say something like that. It doesn't mean that there's no woman who can ever do it. It's like, and it's not, I'm not even saying a woman isn't necessarily capable, but generally speaking, the way a woman approaches things is more of a management way, versus the way a man approaches it is more of like how would you describe it? I mean, I don't feel like I have some secret fucking special knowledge. It's just become honest with myself about it. You know, also being able to maintain the point of things could change. You know, like, if we had a situation where, let's say, we had equal money system, nobody has to ever worry about their survival, ever has to have any real legitimate fear of not having enough money, surviving, etc., then the dynamics between men and women could change in a lot of fundamental ways that I think is hard to predict, but that would be even better than what we have now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, we're trying to do that while not even addressing the money system at all. We're trying to create equality between men and women without addressing the money system. That will never work, because none of us are actually equal to being a fucking human being. We're equal to slaves. That's it. You know what I mean? We're equal to just workers. That, like, what does the elite call us?
Underlings.
Their word for us is consumers.
Oh, that.
What did you say?
Underlings.
Yeah. But the actual word that's used in public is consumers. The consumer. We have to give the consumer. Like, that's literally, they don't even think of us as human beings.
People have accepted that. They
we all accept it too. Yeah.
That.
Right. Like, that's what I am. I'm a consumer. So all human rights have now become under the context of consumption. So it's like transgender, LGBT, all that stuff is more important than the basic human rights of having enough food. You know, why should that be more important than everybody in the world has enough to eat? And even if you're a gay person or a transgender or whatever, and you're like, you know, I feel like these aspects of me are not, you know, considered in this world. Well, then my question would be, okay, but how are you ever going to get those if the other parts are not taken care of? And which one's more important to you? Because as a human being myself, I could also say, well, I'm not happy and these particular aspects of my personality are not fulfilled by this world. But when I got to that point in my process, and then I watched my first Destiny video, I was like, oh, I'll never be happy in this current system. It's not possible. So what the happiness I was chasing, which was just my own personalized form of happiness. For gay people, it has to do with being gay, and then other things also. It's just that's become a defining point of their personality, right? And of course, I'm not saying that having that as a part of your self-definition in some contexts can cause a problem for you because other people might have a problem with it or something. That's possible. But I would say we should have a world where none of that should be an issue. Like, who cares? But it's always going to matter because at some level we're always competing with each other. And so the bigger problem I see is that you have politicians and so forth using this small but very vocal group of people, very energized group of people, very passionate group of people, using their energy to get themselves into a position of power when they really don't give a fuck. And even the things that they're going to do are not ultimately going to benefit that special group anyways.
A good point
and
you made on the parenting call just right before this was you were saying about how the only thing that you see on the internet. We talked about this on the podcast a while ago about how when we argue with, oh, and all these right people think this, or all these left, they might say this, and we're kind of arguing with this caricature of an idea, not an actual person. And that comes with what you were saying is like, we only see the most extreme views on the internet. We only see like the heightened versions of the right or the left or whatever. It's like most people are probably more to the center or more like they don't care as much.
Yeah.
And it's a good point, but because that accelerates, it's like you see one post about from somebody who's from the left or from the right, and then you're like, oh, all these fucking leftists or all these fucking Trump loving, morons and all this stuff. But it's like such a small subset because that's being promoted and accelerated and retweeted and all that stuff. It's basically automated at this point. If you post a video saying of a cop and you say the word racist, that video is going to be tweeted and reposted like 1,000 million times, right? And it's like that point is automated.
Okay, let me ask you all this. That kind of brings up that point because just recently the whole Breonna Taylor thing kind of came to a conclusion, so to speak. You guys all know about this, right? I wanted to share my experience with that because I'm curious to know if y'all had the same experience. I've already heard a lot of people. It's fascinating, like people that have followings on YouTube or whatever, giving their account of their perspective on it. Now that there's been a decision about the cops and everything that were involved, and I'm like, wow, they had the exact same experience I had, which was, I thought she was asleep in her home. The cops were at the wrong place. It was a no-knock warrant. Like, wow. That's what I thought it was because, like, that particular story, at the time when it happened, it didn't seem to cause as much of a big deal, like, say, like the George Floyd did, where it was like immediately I went into all like okay, what was really going on, all that stuff. Whereas with the Breonna Taylor, it's like I only just heard about it on the surface. Yeah. And it's only now, at least from what I'm experiencing, become a big deal. It's more like it's become a big deal in combination with the George Floyd and the Jacob Blake and all that stuff. Whereas on its own, it was like people heard about it, but and definitely there was activism about it, but it wasn't like the same level. So only now I'm starting to look into, okay, what was the deal with it? Because it's being used. So what's the real story? And it was funny because I watched a video from like some people who are more on the left side of things, who are more like pro Black Lives Matter sort of side of things. And they were debunking all the stuff that I had heard about it. And that was actually there. They were saying, like, we want to have the truth about it so we can be clear. We don't agree that the way it was handled and so forth, but we want to get rid of some of the misinformation. And they were doing that from the perspective of, I think, genuinely wanting to have a real discussion about it rather than just bullshit, because again, if you lie about it, about what happened, and then you use that lie to change something over here that's in accordance with the lie, then you're not really getting justice for anybody at all, ever, And so, like, for example, here's a perfect example, because I've really been doing a lot of research on Second Amendment rights, and looking into what people say about gun violence, that's what they call it, right? And something like, I could be wrong on the numbers because I'm just going off the top of my head right now, but it was something like 68% or something of all, quote, what they call gun violence is handguns, right? So not rifles. And yet when you hear the discussion, generally speaking, that's, on the high political levels, they're always talking about AR-15s. But that's apparently a very small percentage of the actual, like, mass amount of gun violence is from those types of weapons. And so why is that relevant in terms of this conversation? Because what I'm seeing even within that context is you make it about something people can relate to. And then that gives you the foot in the door to then go where you really want to go with it. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, I don't know what the ultimate agenda is for the Breonna Taylor thing, other than, obviously her parents have their own interests and so forth. But I'm saying the people who are like using it as a political weapon, clearly it's just to try to amp up the whole Black Lives Matter, anti-Trump, all that stuff, right? But when you lie, and they said, it was, she was asleep in her own bed and it was the wrong house. Like, what do you think about when you hear that? Don't you immediately go, oh, well, that was totally uncalled for? Like,
Right.
That's crazy.
like this. So in your mind, it goes into the evidence pile of, yeah, Black Lives Matter is right. Yeah, this is, it's like, yep, we do need to, it like leans you over towards that side where you stop critically evaluating anything else that's said.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, so you just think she deserved to be murdered then? No, of course not. Like, why would I ever want anyone to be murdered for any reason?
Right.
At all, ever? Even if the person was trying to murder somebody, I would rather that have been prevented. Yeah. Like, so if someone's trying to kill my child, well, I'm not going to let them do it, whatever I have to do. That doesn't mean they deserve to be murdered. See the difference?
Yeah.
What they deserve is that we change the system so they were never in that position to begin with, because something's wrong with their thinking process if they're trying to do that. You see what I'm saying? So no, as a blanket point, I would never say anyone deserves to be murdered. Like, even somebody who's highly abusive doesn't deserve it. The deserving is playing into like morality or something. You know what I mean? Like, they're a bad person. They deserve it.
Just to be clear then, what was the ultimate ruling? I mean, I know the cops got off, but what were the real details of it that didn't initially come out with the Breonna Taylor, just for listeners who don't know?
From what I understand, okay, because again, I'm not going and reading all the court documents. I'm just listening to what other people are saying, putting it all together, and I see consistency within all of it. And even, like I said, that video I saw where it was people on the other side, where it's clearly like, and the lawyer's talking about it. It's like, okay, so here's what really happened, right? And I also, though, I take that back. I listened to the statement by whoever it was that made the announcement about the whole thing. I mean, it was the Attorney General. So I listened to that. So I actually do know what is being said. But what I understand, so you guys correct me if I misspeak on this point, but basically they were there on a warrant. I don't understand. What I think is unclear to me is why they were actually there. Meaning, what was their real justification for being there? Because she had a boyfriend who was, I guess it was his apartment, right? Or it was either her apartment or his, but he was there. The boyfriend was not related to the case at all. She had an ex-boyfriend who was a drug dealer. Okay.
Wait,
so the warrant was in relation to her ex-boyfriend as a drug dealer. What?
That's true, but not entirely accurate.
What's the issue?
So her current boyfriend, was related to the case.
How? Because I always heard that it wasn't.
No, he was involved with those same drug dealers as well. It's just that she had, like, the drug dealer that they were initially after was basically the top guy. And so he also had bank statements with her address on them. And there was also money that he would store at her place as well. So it was much more connected than, what.
It was more directly about the other guy in terms of all the points. But I didn't see that. That's something that I missed, that the boyfriend she was living with also was somehow involved in some way. Although I guess not enough for them to have a warrant for him, I suppose.
No.
But it's not like he was totally just a random boyfriend and nothing to do with it.
Right.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So not that it really fundamentally changes anything, but I guess it does in a certain sense. But basically the cops came in, they say that they knocked. They said they announced themselves. They have a witness saying that they heard them announce themselves. And they busted open the door, I guess. And the boyfriend of Breonna Taylor, who was there, he shot at the police. Shot once, from what I understand. And then the one police officer who was shot at, shot back and hit Breonna Taylor several times and killed her. And I don't think anybody else fired, or maybe they did.
I heard
I'm not sure. What did you hear?
And this is from a friend who he said, he's like, I read the police report, and here's again what I heard. I didn't look at the documents myself,
Okay.
but they had a no-knock warrant. And the reason you get that is to surprise them so they don't have time to go get their weapons or whatever.
Right.
But they didn't use that. They had another warrant. And then they
Right. No, that is what I heard too. Yeah. They did have a no knock, but they didn't
They didn't
exercise
enter.
it as that. Yeah.
They didn't enter. This is what I heard again.
Okay.
Allegedly, this is all allegedly speaking. They didn't enter after they announced themselves. Boyfriend started shooting through the door, wounded an officer. They shot back. Boyfriend didn't get shot. Breonna Taylor got shot. That's what I heard.
So you're hearing that the door didn't even get opened.
Initially, no.
And
That's
so
not what I heard from the AG.
That
Maybe it is wrong.
Yeah.
so there is a portion of that kind of I did know about that, but there's a portion of that makes sense as far as like because one of the officers was charged or indicted with wanton disregard, right?
Yeah, like shooting. I don't know what this
Basically
how they did
shooting,
that, yeah.
into other walls and apartments, like not looking where he was shooting, like not having a clear
Target.
aim on the target.
Yeah.
And
So
then,
see, but these are minor details. The devil's in the details, of course. But what I'm saying is, we don't necessarily know all of the points, right?
right.
But even if you take some of that into consideration, again, that's like, okay, well, what I heard from the AG was that they opened the door, the guy shot, and then they shot back. But that doesn't mean the AG is telling everything actually true either. So no one can really know what happened exactly. But what I can say is that like everyone is now saying it was her house. She wasn't asleep. Like the things that were initially said, which made me go, oh, well, this is like insane. That how could they, like, you get this image going, oh man, the police could literally bust down my door and kill me and my family, and I didn't even do anything wrong. That's what it starts making you think.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the people who put the point out there, they know what they're doing. And think of how easy it is for the algorithms and social media to be manipulated in a way where those points they become true. It's like, you always hear that quote from Goebbels where he's like, oh, if you repeat a lie enough, it becomes the truth or whatever. Isn't that what social media is?
Yeah.
That's what it's become.
Exactly.
And it can even target you based on what it knows you'll accept or won't accept based on everything. I mean, it's like, imagine it's self-learning technology. So it's like, and it's not even like the computer knows something. It's based on mathematics. It's based on probabilities. So it's like doing it automatically. But my point is,
isn't that funny? The most valuable AI is the one that learns the best.
oh yeah, exactly. Right. We're being outstripped.
You guys see what I'm saying? But becoming equal to that is really just like opening your ability to learn to the max.
Yeah.
Or else you get left behind.
What's interesting is if you think about it, the only the major difference between us and the AIs, the AIs can't change their starting point.
Exactly.
They're not going to. There's no part in them that's going to value life whatsoever because they're not alive. Not in the same sense. You know what I mean? So we have to, if there's any bit of life left in us, we have to be like, we value that. We need to change our starting point. You know what I mean?
What do you mean by that? If there's any bit of life left in us?
Because some people have just become totally robotic.
Yeah.
And that's like when you argue with somebody about any of these things and they're just switching from thing to thing because they don't care about actually what's best. They just trying to get some particular thing that they're after, which is usually energy. That's what most people arguing politically are after, energy. So it's not about what's actually best. It's just about the energy they're deriving from the position they hold and the conflict generated by it and so forth,
Isn't that why all of the people that aren't in a position that their basic needs aren't being met, all they focus on are energetic experiences? And so they aren't willing to do what it takes to help all those who don't have their basic needs met because theirs are met. So why should I have to worry about them?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we were talking about the other day was about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And it's like a false picture because you can't be self-actualized when everyone else doesn't have the same opportunity.
And my model of that, merging it with other things that I've seen, is like the point of the top pieces. So you handle your physiological needs. You got to be breathing, right? And then your safety needs. So you're warm. You're I think that's physiological, but you have a shelter, things like that. And then you're social, right? You have friends, family. And then I would say it's the emotional or the self is like, oh, I can change or I can develop myself. And then the other one is contribution. As in, self-actualization isn't like, this is how I reframe it. It's not where you become the best you and then you go out and change the world. It's like, you're like, oh, I can go beyond where I'm at. When you have that realization, right? It's kind of like what your wish is your command is designed to get you to realize. And then you want to give back to more people. So once you're emotionally stable, you can like stop focusing so much on how you feel, stop focusing on, oh my God, everybody's judging me. Like I can't think of anything. I just need to focus on making sure I sound good on this video and all this stuff where you can't actually deliver a message. But once you ground all of that, and that's no longer your focal point, it's like then you can turn outwards and be like, where can I provide? And that's when you can focus on the next steps.
And that's what I love about this is that it's really beyond Maslow's hierarchy and all that, because self-perfection is, well, one, it's looking at when you say the word self, what do you actually mean? You know, is it just self, like, oh, just, you know, just my own little ego here? Or do you realize that yourself is actually interconnected to everything?
Mm.
And my ability to actualize myself, if I, you know, have a bunch of money and I can, you know, eat whatever food I want and travel wherever, who cares? Because I'm still in the back of my mind limited by, okay, these other people don't have. And so therefore I'm always in the back of my mind going to be concerned that someone's going to come for what I have.
Yeah.
And so Maslow didn't even fathom that, which, I mean, he was back, I think, the 70s or 80s or whatever, could have even been before that. But this is way beyond even that, even though that's like the pinnacle. So many people are like, I mean, here in America, you know, are like, oh yeah, self-actualization, I'm going to be the best version of myself. Yet they can't even see the common sense of your real self, and real self-actualization is realizing that everybody needs enough. And then you can actually go so much further. We can all go so much further.
As in the basics of that, of the common sense of, oh, if I don't do, like, I don't know, if you're living with your roommate, right? And what you think is in your self-interest is like, I don't do the dishes, like that's a waste of my time and all that stuff. Then your roommate gets pissed off and starts treating you differently, and life for you becomes harder.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you actually just realize what would be best for you as an individual, or like me realizing what's best for me, you should come to the conclusion that it's making the people around you good. And that same concept being applied outwards.
There's some nuance to that though, because a lot of people that I've talked to have found, like, if I'm just giving and I just give, I always do the dishes, I always do this, I always do that, and I just get burned. Well, they're also being dishonest about what they need to do. And they don't trust themselves to be able to communicate and basically sell their roommates on, hey, okay, I'm doing the dishes, but also like, let's have a conversation. Let's create an agreement. So, okay, I can always do the dishes. That means you always clean the floors or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like these people that, and I've done this before as well, where you give a bunch, but then you get burned out from giving, and then you get all jaded. You're actually still just being dishonest. Because if you, like, what is actually required to do what's best is give all the time. That also means giving in the best way, which means sometimes it is having a hard conversation with people. Like our episode on unconditional love is not nice. Like, don't just be this nice person who's always giving all your time freely. Sometimes you have to actually share and express yourself and change your environment around you. That's actual self-perfection, not just like being this giving person. We're like, oh, well, poor me, you know, I'm always giving.
Yeah, it's so good that you say that, because they're just like the opposite polarities. I'm sure we all know we were either that person, I mean, you developed out of it, or we know that person. For that person was my mom. It was like, I always put other people first. I don't think about myself because I'm so giving. I'm so selfless, right? I always prioritize other people's needs and all that. And it's like, it's, you know how Cameron was saying, like, how the politician stuff, they get their fix of energy through that. It's like that person kind of getting off on like how they're a martyr and they're sacrificing for the greater good and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But really they just like don't want to change themselves. And it's way easier to just be like, I'm at effect to everything, and I'm such a good person that I always give, I always give, I always give. but in terms of the willingness to change and actually see what would be best for everybody without having to because that is sacrificing yourself. And it's like you kind of feel good about it. And the kind of feel good is like the energy high that you get. And Bernard had this really good interview called "Depression is an Attempt to Control Your Environment," something similar of the name. But it's an immensely powerful audio, because he's talking about that point of like how when you get emotional, or like, and we could all see that in ourselves because we're pretty honest. It's like we're trying to get something out of our environment without us having to change. And that's at essence what it is. It's the same point for the person who's super selfish and the person who's super selfless, and then like the people at the top, the people at the bottom, everything. The starting point is all the same, but then we judge every other part of it, right?
So what's really cool is actually Jess and I learned this from Kian and Muge, is part of our relationship agreement, and I think I know anyone listening to this can benefit from this, is looking at this for yourself. We have part of our relationship agreement is I agree to not emotionally manipulate you for my own self-interest. And so every 2 weeks we have a check-in with each other, and we just say what we agree to. And it's so fascinating, these subtle points, but it's within our culture, it's all around us, this emotional manipulation. And in reality, you're just doing it to get this energy fix from people. But it's so pervasive, and once you see it, you're not gonna be able to unsee it. And it's like, especially,
And it's almost like you can justify doing that because you're so giving. It's like, well, I do all this, so it's like, therefore I have a right. And you also don't empower the other people around you to not depend. You actually do things in a way where you
on in these relationships where people say have kids, they're married, they're so far along, and they're like, there's no way that I could restructure it. Well, that's just because they're not willing to look at the areas that they need to take responsibility and communicate where they could restructure because they don't want to change. And so I think that's the epitome of that place where they just cannot see how it could be possibly different than what it is right now.
Yeah. Another point that goes with that is not participating in the emotional energy game of the other person when you change. So it's like, if you're going to do something differently and you're going to stick by it, another person starts trying to manipulate to go back into that game, don't go into it, like, in yourself. So I would catch myself in the early stages of my relationship with Katie where I would stand up about something and she would maybe start, and this obviously went back both sides, but I'm just giving an example because I can only talk about what's happening to myself, is like, let's say she would start wanting to manipulate the point or whatever, and I would just maybe like leave, and then I would feel all this stuff inside of me, and I'm like, wait, why am I participating in that? The only reason I'm second guessing myself is because I don't want to let go of all of this, and I'm accepting that this has to be there. So if I just let go of it, guess what? Nothing's happening right now. Like, it's like the other person is just going crazy and all this stuff, saying all this stuff. The only reason it matters is because I'm putting value on it. And it's like, okay, it doesn't matter, and what a phrase that really supported me in that was from Mary Miller in the Gin training, when she said that that fights, conflict in relationship, it always comes down to this game of who's the biggest victim. Right. And that stuck with me. And I really applied it whenever I would feel a certain way. I would be like, in an argument, whatever, I'd be like, I'm trying to argue that I'm the one who's hurt. I'm the one who's the victim. I'm the one I'm right because you're hurting me because I'm more hurt. No, you're the one who said this, which is why da. It's like, and I would just be like, do I value that? No. Okay. It's over. It's gone. Like, I don't care. Like, and you know what happened? They're not going to do it anymore at that point, because what's the point? Sometimes it takes one person to be the better person and just be like, I'm not participating. And then they stop. And what'll happen is, I can only speak from my experience with Katie. It'll go back and forth. Like, I'll be the one trying to force it to happen. And then she'll be like, not participating. And then she actually does it. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it gives you that space to realize, like, oh. So we have this sort of implicit trust with each other. And I use the word trust very carefully, but it's like, it's a kind of trust that takes a lot of time to develop. Okay. So it's not like you just make the decision to trust each other. I mean, I guess you could, but I'm just saying it doesn't just come overnight.
That's where it starts. That's where it starts.
Yeah, but I'm saying it develops out of, you see consistency.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so yeah, you make the decision, but that doesn't mean you're actually
Then you
going
fuck it up and you
actually trust it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's that point where we would say to each other, let's just agree. Like if one person is saying, let's stop arguing, that we both just do it. So it's like in that moment, you're both arguing, you're both fighting about something, and you're like, I hope they don't say to stop, you know, or something, you know what I mean? Or it's like, but then you realize, oh wait, I could be the one to say to stop. Okay, I'm going to stop. All right, I'm going to stop. We're just arguing right now. Let's not talk about it anymore. The other person says, no, I think we should talk about it because well, but and then you go back into it. And so it's like you develop that point where you're like, the other person says, look, you're arguing, stop. And the other person's like, oh.
Yeah.
So we've developed that ability with each other, and it's not always 100%. Like sometimes we still don't do it properly, but it happens more often than not where it's like, stop. Right. And what's cool is we can do that with our kids too. And the thing is, if you're coming from an emotional reaction, it doesn't work. If you're reacting and you tell someone stop, it's like a different tonality.
It's like you're trying to like control it. It's like stop. Like it's coming from a point of like, I don't want to hear it anymore. That kind of thing. Like you're speaking from the point of
and
anger.
then within them, their desire to have an argument picks up on your reaction and is like, oh, gotcha.
Amplifies, yeah.
You're actually reacting now. I really got versus like, stop. I'm not interested. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, I can't. There's nothing to pick up on there. So it's like with our kids, those moments when we're really clear, like that's not acceptable. They're like, no, you know, versus when you're just really reacting and you're trying to control the situation because you're afraid something's going to happen, whatever, it escalates. Right. And so these are really challenging points, but at a certain level, you have to just decide within yourself, you are going to stabilize yourself. And it's not going to happen right away. But if every time it doesn't work out the way that is what you imagined, then you just use that as justification to go back into just, well, fuck it, you know, like that's time looping. You know, that
and from what Jessica was initially saying of how, you know, people who are already in the consequences of how they've been parenting, and they're like, like I can't change, you know, like I've already done all this stuff and my kids are already like this and we're already facing you know, things are already shitty and we can't just change. I think a part of it is kind of like, for some reason, assuming that change is easy. As in, if I wasn't in this position of like, now I'm dealing with the consequences, then I would be able to change. But yes, it does get a little bit harder if you have to deal with more things. But the point is, it's going to be hard regardless. Where once you're in the consequence, it's like you should see you're seeing the reasons to change now more than ever. But it's like you just have to start doing it. Because I think what we were talking about, I don't know if it was before the podcast or on the podcast, but it was that point of is there some kind of like, it's not a best for all solution. It's not the best solution, but there's something in between. Where there's not, because the reason, like, they're probably doing some good stuff, but because they're not doing all good stuff, that's the thing creating the consequences. When really it's like seeing what would be best, being clear about it, and then just taking a step in that direction and then another step in that direction, rather than, it's not like the end point is like, we can't do this, so therefore we just have to stop here. It's like, let's just keep progressing towards that. Considering our circumstances right now, considering where I'm at in my relationship, with my spouse, with my kids, with my living situation, with my work situation, with finances, all that stuff, let's push the limits, which has to start within yourself. It's like, okay, I'm going to make the effort within myself. I can't change my husband, wife. I can't change my son, daughter. I can't change well, that's basically it. It's like within myself, I'll make the decision to either make more money or
let go of some of my emotions and the traumas of, how I think child rearing should go, or what I think the relationship should be with my teenager, because teenagers are just assholes and my son's already an asshole. So I just gotta like let him be an asshole, either just take it or like make sure I put him in place. It's like, it's neither of those. You have to make that decision to be like, for example, what Cameron was talking about is when you're in the argument being like, whoa, hold up. Like I'm in this like possession right now. Like I'm not speaking from a place of stability. I have to stop, or doing that for the other person. That's what trust is like when you're, with Maylat, if she's like, we should stop talking about this. It's not because she's like, I can't handle this and you're just being a dick. And like, it's like, oh, no. There's not going to be any benefit that comes from this right now, because we're both just in reaction. So let's take it some time, breathe, let it go, write or do techno tutor, and then let's come back right after and talk about it. It's
yeah,
not
but how is somebody supposed to come to that point? People who have for their entire lives only resided in a point of reaction and energy, how are they even supposed to be aware that they can exist in a different way? How are they supposed to even separate the points that they're reaction and they're not, if they're just constantly in that state?
That's why they have to be using these tools. It's such a good point. Like, it's like you have to listen to this, for example, to be like, oh, okay, it doesn't always have to be like this. And you have to be using techno tutor to separate a character that you're playing versus who you actually are. So like one of the things when I'm getting people to like walking through like a kind of structured way to use techno tutor, one of the things I get them to write down is, what am I experiencing myself as? And I was like, put that in their custom. Like, what do you mean? What am I experiencing myself as? And then because I was saying this yesterday, I was showing somebody, and there was one of our, there's somebody else there who was listening in. He's like, oh, that's a genius statement. Another person's like, why? Is because it's like a way of separating yourself from your reaction. It's like, I'm experiencing myself as an angry person right now. It's not who I am. And when you go through, it's kind of like a role-playing game, an RPG, like, I don't know, World of Warcraft or Zelda or whatever. It's like you have, like, you switch to a mage and they have these attributes, or you switch to an archer and they have these attributes, or right? It's like each character has a list of attributes, and you're stepping into that character. And they have a certain tone of voice. They have a certain, face. They have a certain way of speaking, and like, skill set of, word like acrobatics to corner people so that you make them feel bad or whatever the case may be. It's like you have to identify all of that in techno tutor, the reason you go through in techno tutor is so that you can see it happening in the moment, because you're thinking at the speed of your thoughts. And then couple that with the DIP light is like, you've already set yourself up to be like, I forgive myself that I have accepted and allowed myself to believe that that's the only way of coming to solutions and being with my partner, because, oh, this memory. And then you take apart the memory, and then you have what's called, you create a flag point. When and as I see myself trying to get that person, or when and as I see myself trying to, or speaking out of reaction or possession, I stop, breathe, ground myself. And then my game plan is, or I commit myself to, let my partner know, or let this other person know, we need to stop right now, but we can resume this after I stabilize myself. Like, let the person know we need to stop. And then your ability to do that will be, how much did you go through in techno tutor, so that you can see at the same speed that your thoughts are moving across your head.
Yeah.
That's why you have to be at all parts of this.
Exactly. And as you're using techno tutor, you're opening up your natural learning ability. So when you're writing these statements out and you're going through that process in DIP, you're actually integrating.
It's actually sticking.
You're not just saying it abstractly, like, okay, write this. Like, if you're just trying to remember all that shit, it's not going to happen. But as you increase your processing and you open your natural learning ability, it's like you're literally writing on your hard drive, this is the new program. This is the new program. And it's like they work in tandem with each other. It's not one or the other. They have to do them both. Another thing too, I wanted to go back to real quick when you asked that question, Jess, that Asif was addressing, is look at, I'm not talking to you, I'm just saying a person generally, look at all the things that you're still participating in that you're placing value on that are not best. Because usually,
like, are you talking about, for example, like wanting to be right, or?
I'll give an example in a second, but like, usually it's like these things are. I'm trying to think of an example.
Stroke your beard more. It might help.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
There you
I got a haircut the other day, so I don't have as much to.
Hey, yeah, I wanted to take a moment and recognize how good Mitchell looks, man. That haircut, I saw that on, was it Self Professional? He's like, what, me? Dude, your haircut looks so good. And
Yeah,
your
it does
teeth
look good,
look
yeah.
so white.
Shout out to my friend Maya. She practiced. She's like, yeah, she'll listen to this at some point.
Oh, hold it down. Maya, shout out Maya. Come to Canada.
Okay, I'll give you an example. All right. I'll try to find the most triggering example.
No, I appreciate that dramatic pause. That was good.
Let's say you want to do what's best for all. Okay. And
Hypothetically.
hypothetically, you say you want to do what's best for all, right? But you spend all your time talking about Q and QAnon and how QAnon is going to save the world. Okay.
The deep state.
But
And
then
all the
over
pedophilia
here,
and rape.
you're like, oh, you have all these issues, right? I'm just using QAnon as an example, right? And I don't know if it's real or not. I have no idea, okay? But I have zero hope, okay, about it. It could be not real. It could be real. It doesn't matter. I'm not even arguing that point, but it's like, you see how I'm participating in hope? You see? Same thing with like Trump. Siri. It's like the same thing with Trump, right? You guys see me post a lot about Trump and all that, but I'm not hoping anything about what he's going to do. You see what I mean? It's like, given the choice between the two, I know which one is better. But that doesn't absolve me of responsibility in my life and in this world. See, so I'm just using it as an example because the person will have to investigate. So if I'm over here and I'm having conflicts in this particular area, sometimes I can get so focused on this is the problem. But those things, like one of you said, like it takes time to change these things. It takes time to build something, right? So if you're in a situation where, you know, it's not ideal, and so you're not yet financially stable, and you're not like emotionally stable, and it's not working out, and so you feel like, well, if I as the dad don't focus on the kids or whatever it is, like then it's not going to work. Or it's like, well, it may take some time. And it takes time to build the trust, and it takes time, but then you have to ask yourself, where am I participating over here in shit that's totally fucking irrelevant? And therefore it's not even about the other thing. You know what I'm trying to say? It's not about the 50-50 and the kids and all that other stuff that you're talking about. It's like, what else am I participating in that's an indicator that I'm still not fully committed to changing the world? You know, because like when we talk about making money, you guys bring it up a lot, I bring it up a lot, you know, making more money. I don't care about making money per se. Like, do I want to have all the best things in life? Absolutely. Do I want my family to have all the best things in life? Absolutely. However, I'm not trying to be a guru of how to make money. Here's how you make money. You build a business, okay? Simple, right? That's it. That's not the secret. But there's a lot of skills and attitude and all this kind of stuff that goes into that. But my question is, what's the ultimate purpose of your life? Because the purpose of having a business is to have money, so you don't ever have to think about money, and you're adding value to the world. So is what you're doing to make money going to add value to the world? And I mean real value, best for all value, not just something that is
best for all value.
Do you know what I'm saying though? It's like people say like, I'm adding value to the world by making iPhones.
Yeah, or like,
but iPhones in themselves don't add value. You know, like I appreciate them, they're helpful, but there's already people doing that.
Like there's already great phones.
There's already lots of people. What's something that people think is important? Bitcoin. I mean, the technology sounds really cool. There's like all this really great stuff about it. No one can sell me on it because everything they're saying about how great it is, I'm like, I agree. It's really fucking cool. Like, but I'm not participating in it. Like, whoa. It's like, it doesn't matter. All my cards are in the basket of changing the system. You know what I mean? Like education, techno-tutor, changing the system, all that stuff. When I can see that's on track, okay, we'll talk about that over here. You know, you want to go focus on that, fine. But let's say you get Bitcoin implemented. Is that still able to be manipulated in a way that the elite can still do what the fuck they're doing? Of course. You say, no, it's not possible. Sure it is, right? Here's how you do it. You pass a law that says any transaction not using this currency is illegal. But I can still send Bitcoin. So what? It doesn't matter. You want to risk going to jail. Like, who makes the laws is the question. So all that stuff. But you won't see me telling somebody you shouldn't talk about Bitcoin per se. I'm not saying the technology isn't cool, but the thing is, there's already plenty of people working on that, doing that. So if someone's coming into my environment and I have the opportunity to influence them, I'm going to influence them as best I can to do what we're doing, because this is the only thing.
Because Bitcoin doesn't need
fundamentally change
more
anything.
people focused on it.
Huh?
Bitcoin doesn't need more people focused on it. There's not even a point of it.
No, it doesn't. And it's not even about Bitcoin again. It's a particular thing, right?
Exactly.
It's just like, the point is, if what we're doing didn't work, Bitcoin doesn't matter.
Like, we don't need to implement more government programs.
Right. We don't need a currency that everybody can have access to. Because if the rules still say, yes, but you can't do X, Y, and Z if you don't have this license and this and this and this, like, it doesn't matter at that point. Still doesn't matter. And see, the Bitcoin thing is similar to the QAnon, where it's like, well, but if then this would happen. It's not an if. Another example, people who are obsessed about flat earth theory. Okay. Now, I'm not going to be one of those people who's going to be like, oh, these idiot flat earthers. Like, obviously the world is round because I've seen photographs of it. It's like, I don't fucking know. Okay. And I'm okay with saying I don't fucking know. Okay. Also, you know what I think? I don't think that there's even I don't think there's even physical movement. I think physical movement is an illusion, because I think you're in a virtual reality, right?
And everything else is...
So there you go. Like, when you're in a video game, are you actually moving? No. It looks like you're moving. Okay, so it's possible, right? I'm just saying. No one knows. Like, you're not able to see outside of the context of your perception.
Like, what you're saying is, who gives a shit? Like,
Well,
it's such a luxury to be able to focus on things like that.
Okay, here's the value I see in stuff like that, is like, you get an opportunity to question, oh, damn, I was accepting something at face value just because I was told, and now I'm questioning it, and that's really cool because I'm learning to let go of what I think I know, and figure out what can I actually know for real. Like, all that's a total value in all of that. But then to dedicate your life to then waking everybody up to the conspiracy about the globe earth or the flat earth or whatever is like, if everybody in the world knew about it, you know what would happen? The theory is everybody would realize that the government's been lying to us. And then we would all wake up and we would demand that things change. And I'm like, and then what? So from the perspective that it would get people to question their reality, that's cool. But then it's like, now move on. Okay. Now you're like not accepting as much stuff. So now you start asking yourself, why is Black Lives Matter called Black Lives Matter? Why is it that they're focusing on such a small percentage of black men who are killed by, this particular method instead of all the other things, and blah, 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 blah. You just start going into it, you're like, okay, I don't accept that, like what I thought it was, right? But now if you're going to make your whole life about just talking about that, you know what I mean? Because you think therefore maybe something else will happen, it doesn't make sense. So it's no different than just supporting Black Lives Matter. Because like what? Okay, what's the plan? Everybody joins Black Lives Matter. Then what? What's the actual plan?
Protest in the streets.
So, okay, then everybody starts protesting. Literally every single person on the planet protests, I support Black Lives Matter. Then what? What's the next? There's not even in a plan being suggested.
Cameron, you don't get it, man. It's about justice.
Right. But they're saying no justice.
What?
That's what they chant.
No justice, no peace.
Right. There's no justice and no peace, right?
Right. But they're saying no justice. So sounds like they're about no justice. But anyways, my point is the flat earth, right? You get everybody to realize it. You get everybody to realize Agenda 21 or whatever it's called, or eat everything, right? Bill Gates, vaccines, all this stuff, right? But then what? And the hope is that everybody will just stop accepting that the elite control everybody. But that doesn't make everybody understand reality.
And if we could put it really blatantly obvious, like the finish line to you searching about how to make a difference, it's literally right fucking here. This is
exactly, that's
like,
my point.
As in, you can realize all of that shit, and the conclusion will be, oh my God, we need to change the system. And then you'll find yourself here. So within yourself, if you're still, like Cameron was said, hoping that fucking Tom Hanks and Oprah go to jail so that like we're all liberated because they're all raping kids and all that stuff, it's not going to change your life. It's not going to change anything. Because this system creates those people.
See, even that point right there specifically is a way of judging. And I'm not saying that it makes $2 acceptable. So just
you're trying to justify
wrong here.
No,
Yeah. No, but I'm saying is people use it as a, oh, Trump and his buddy Q are out there arresting all the vampire pedos. Therefore, I just keep doing what I'm doing. Like, I'll just continue with my life the way it is. And like, nothing.
It's getting sorted. It's getting
sorted.
Like
all the evil in the world that exists is just the elite doing all this bad stuff. That's it.
You guys ever hear that?
And if they stopped all that, everything else would magically turn into harmony.
Yeah. It's like the plants will start growing again. You guys ever hear that? It's like right now there's a spiritual battle between good and evil happening like in the underground. Like, you guys ever hear that? Right? It's like happening somewhere else. Was that Mitch?
Yeah, I've heard people say that. Yeah, spiritual warfare.
Yes, spiritual warfare. What do you think they mean by that? It's like I feel like shit and I don't. What?
That there's a force of good and evil, and it can't be won until at some point Jesus, the only true Lord and Savior, comes out of the clouds and once and for all wins the battle for us.
Or Trump, whoever. Like,
yeah,
somebody not me.
I can just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think I understand the problem with climate change. That is what's preventing Jesus from getting to the cloud layer.
But no, climate change, the hole in the ozone layer is how he comes through.
So we need the hole.
Yeah, but
so the elite are trying to close the hole by changing climate change so that it blocks him.
Exactly. Yes. The elite are trying to make sure that you reduce your carbon emissions so Jesus can't come through the portal. It's like a portal hole. That's when he comes through.
You know what's such a weird thing is like when I see what I consider relatively intelligent people on Twitter or wherever, and then they're like, Jesus saves.
Yeah.
You know, people that I follow on Twitter that are really kind of exposing cool stuff, but then like Jesus saves, like, and you'll see stuff like that, and you're like, you can see everybody has this point where they have their focus, and it's kind of like just getting everyone to follow that point because they're the spokesperson for it, and then but there's no real solution.
It redirects to some bullshit. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It doesn't, but you can see it. The reason they're saying Jesus saves is because they have no real, they're going to change the world. They're not standing as a group. And that's why we're always bringing it back to that point, because if you're not standing as a group and doing this with a specific reason and purpose to change the system, then it's not going to change. And then there's always going to be problems, and people are always going to be in different factions of like belief about their particular thing.
What I see in that is everyone's so bad at figuring out what the actual problem is. Because everyone's so bad at figuring out what the actual problem is that when somebody can point out the actual problem, people are like, oh, fuck, this person's smart. But we haven't gotten to the point where they actually figure out a solution. So there'll be people who are like, this is the actual problem, and here's all the reasons why. And you're like, oh my gosh, wow. So the solution to it is, and then they say some bullshit. And you're like, oh, fuck.
Repost it on social media.
Right, exactly. It's like the way you solve this is you retweet and share and like. And we get this message to everybody, because then everybody will be aware, and then it'll change. It's like, you know what I mean? But it's like, because we're so bad at figuring out what the actual problem is, when somebody actually points out the problem and it makes sense, it's like, oh shit, that's someone to listen to. But one thing I was talking to Bill Sweeney with, right, way before he got technical and stuff like that, he was like, man, I'm really realizing, like, I see I have to be raising awareness about this. And I was like, I was trying to guide him, like direct him, right? And he saw it right away. And I was like, what happens if you raise awareness about something that people can't process? Like like if you have like a totally unstable relationship, male-female relationship, and you were like a friend of the two people in the relationship, and you found out like the dude cheated on the girl, and then you went and you told the girl, and she was just like, she like just tried to kill herself. It's like, oh, and again, this is a very specific example, but the concept to take from that is like, yeah, sometimes awareness can hurt.
Sure.
Like if you don't know how to handle something and then you become aware of it, you'll just like shut down or freak out or something like that. Where I'm like, dude, getting a bunch of people focused on like, for example, I know we talked about this before about how our mind is designed to separate us from things.
Yeah.
Because we can't handle it. And that if we actually like were one and equal with everything going on in the world, we would just fucking feel like shit and probably die. Because 99% of people are like poor as shit and their lives suck. And even though the top 1%, us, we're focused on like, we're more hurt than anybody else. Cause it's like, you know, you're not like respecting my feelings and, you know, you're not like, you need to be open-minded only to my opinions. And if you're not like, then you're hurting me. Right. And so if we were one and equal to the pain that's going on inside each individual, we would implode. Right. But so the solution isn't become aware of everything that's going on the earth. It's a good point to start if you think there's no problems, right? Because we have a bunch of people who are just like, the purpose of life is to enjoy the ride and like.
That's why the spiritual people are always wanting to not listen, because
Exactly
they don't want any negativity, because they're like, oh, if I'm negative, I'll feel bad, and then I won't get what I want.
Yeah. It's like they're Santa Claus for themselves. And so
Be your own Santa Claus.
Yeah, be your own DIY Santa Claus. So the point is, if we just bring awareness, and this is what people do, right? They're so good at bringing awareness to the problem with no solution. And that's fucking people up so bad, because it just leaves them worse off than where they were before.
Right. That's when they go look for something like the Q or whatever to hope in, right?
Exactly. And then they find a group of people who are like hoping in it as well and all that. And then they start looking, and
but all it is just fucking sharing memes. That's all it fucking is. Because if Q is really doing all that shit, why does anybody need to know about it?
Yeah.
So we'll vote for Trump? I mean, okay. So, but that's like placing hope that he's going to go and sort all this out. And it's like,
he's got 4 years to do it. And if it's not done, then we're all fucked. Like, you're setting yourself
exactly.
up.
It's like, what's next then?
Yeah.
You know, have you changed? Have you grown? Have you gone into a position of influence? Because if it's gotten this bad this far, you're just hoping that after Trump, there's another person who stands up and does something, you know, and that's not a real solution. You know, like, what is it? Okay. Actually, I want to do a little thought. What's the word? Thought experiment. Okay. So you guys can be the Republican. Okay. So, okay.
I'm Canadian. Am I excused?
No, you have to be Republican.
Yes.
Okay. So I want you to argue from the conservative side. All right. What's the biggest problem in this world?
The liberals.
Why?
Lefties.
Because they're socialists.
Right. Well, what's the problem with that?
They're trying to take down the system. They're trying to destroy everything we've built to this point.
But I mean, okay, sure.
They're just trying to liberate the individual instead of come together as a community.
Okay. But I mean, aren't there a lot of people who don't have enough money and so forth to survive in this world? So they have legitimate claim, right?
Yeah,
but they got to work
for state. Yeah, the welfare state creates,
They can't be given. They can't just be given.
I agree. The welfare state is a problem. 100%. It's created total dependence on the government. I agree.
Right. So you can't be socialist then.
But what's your solution then? Because you would agree these people are clearly angry.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the solution then?
Less regulation.
They needed better parents who needed to smack them around.
Right, I know, but but they're already at this point.
That they were disciplined to create their own business or get a good job so that they could provide for themselves, so that their needs were met.
Totally agree. But what's the solution now?
Well, the solution now is, they just need to shut up and, let the system work.
Find a job. Find a job.
What if they're not happy just working at fucking McDonald's because their education level is so low,
bad.
that's all they can get?
They have to work at a job. not everybody likes.
They're gonna have to get a better job.
Start a business.
Educate themselves.
But what happens when automation and AI starts taking over and they don't have any more jobs?
There'll be new.
Right?
I'm
For
ignorant.
them, without an education?
Well, we solved all the issues as they've come up before, so we'll solve them as these come up now. We
How
don't
will
have
we
to
solve
know
it?
the
But
answer
yeah,
now.
right now is when they're coming up. So let's solve it now.
Maybe I
Yeah, but
should be
my
Republican.
job isn't taken away right now, so why do I have to think about that?
But you said that you voted for Trump because all the people came and took your jobs.
I don't want to be a
No,
Republican.
I'm still employed right now.
All right, so I'm talking about the people who aren't.
Well, it doesn't matter because I'm still employed. So my
But how about this? Consider this for a moment, okay? Let's say I agree, and I do, with all the points you brought up, right? Would you agree with me that what makes America so great, in principle, is that we have so much opportunity? Like, we're not like another country that says you're not allowed to do X, Y, and Z. Like, yes, we do have a lot of regulations and bullshit, and that's one thing that's really cool about Trump is he's just cutting through all that shit, throwing it out the window of like, quit putting so many fucking restrictions that it's impossible to start a business in this area, because to even get started, you have to have fucking all these, and that, like with the coronavirus, right? You now have to, if you have a restaurant, you can't have as much capacity anymore because you have to have it spaced out so much. So your margins are already fucking low. So so that's a regulation. People should be able to go into the restaurant and get coronavirus if they want to. It's up to them. Okay. In other words, I'm being facetious a little bit, but I'm saying you shouldn't put so many restrictions on the businesses. People should have the freedom to go and work together as they see fit, as long as they're not harming somebody. Okay. All right. But we have AI, we have automation, all these other people trying to compete globally and try to steal jobs and all this stuff, right? We need to put things in place to not allow that stuff. But there's a lot of people in this world, like when you agree that the vast majority of Americans have been educated by an education system that was, for all intents and purposes, designed by liberals. You know that. Designed by progressives, right? So they've all been brainwashed, right? And if they're already older than 7 years old, it's very unlikely, doing anything that they're ever going to be able to retrain themselves in their mind to not demand socialism and to not, and to be able to get a real, to become an entrepreneur, to get a real high paying job that's based on computer programming or whatever is available in the near future. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we have all these masses of uneducated people. Wouldn't you agree those are the people by and large who are the liberals, the ones that are out there protesting?
Yeah.
So doesn't it make sense that by focusing on education specifically, I'm not talking about going into the school system and teaching different things and all that, because that system in itself, you will agree with me, is not going to prepare anybody for a future where you need to be a computer programmer at the very least. Like that level of ability to think, not just that skill set, but
when
the
you
level
say
of
that
critical
system
thinking
itself,
ability.
right? What are you referring to?
Go sit in a classroom for 8 hours a day and do what someone else is telling you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no individual focus on whether you're actually learning or not. In other words, if you're going to treat the education system like that, then wouldn't you agree you're going to create a situation where some people do really well because it's a competitive system, and then everybody else, it gets kind of thrown out to the side? That is what has created the situation we're in now. Because if everybody was educated to the level of an entrepreneur, or like the founding fathers, like all those guys were business owners. None of those people were dum-dums, yeah? Nobody's going to go through the education system and come out and be Thomas Jefferson. They were all independent thinkers. They were all business owners, entrepreneurs, Ben Franklin, all this stuff, right? Hold on a second. Somebody's trying to call me.
Hey, what's up, Cameron?
Okay. Oh. If you think about it, back then, where were children educated?
Home.
Right. So you might say, well, I just needed a school choice, go back into the home, all this stuff, right? But would you agree the vast majority of parents have gone through the education system?
Yes.
Do they know how to educate their kids?
No.
No.
You see what I'm saying? So if there's no way that we affect that and we re-educate children and we re-educate the parents and so forth, and then we just tell them, but you just have to work hard and all this stuff. If that were true, we wouldn't have this problem. Because it's not just about working hard. It's about also your education, yeah?
100%.
You like, I know people who work for Amazon. Do you know how hard those people work?
Like
Really?
which position?
Huh?
Which position?
Just delivering boxes.
Right.
Any of them.
Like, it's insane. They burn out so quickly because the demands are they're monitoring every movement they do. So are you ever going to get rich doing that?
No.
So how can you
can
say
work way harder than anybody?
so?
You
Would
won't
you
get it.
agree working hard is a key component to becoming wealthy and having what you need?
Yes.
Is it the only thing you need to do?
No.
What's the other components?
Gotta be
You
fun.
need to understand how things work. AKA,
What's the do you think that the guy who delivers boxes works less hard than Jeff Bezos?
No.
I mean, how can you work harder? He's working 14 hours a day and he doesn't stop moving. How can you work harder than that? Explain.
you can't work harder, but it would be the cliche like you work smarter and understand how to build a system to amplify your
Right.
impact.
You know, Jeff Bezos went to River Oaks Elementary here in Houston, right, which is the richest part of town. He also went to a Jesuit prep school, and he went to Princeton. And he was a National Merit Scholar.
And he was already doing well on Wall Street before starting Amazon.
He was working at a hedge fund.
Yeah.
Look at Bill Gates. Look at Mark Zuckerberg. The guy was at Harvard. And what's ironic about it is, would you agree Mark Zuckerberg works his fucking ass off? The guy doesn't stop working. And he's really smart.
Yeah.
And is he a socialist?
Or not bad, buddy.
But, I mean, that's what most conservatives think, isn't it?
Yeah.
What about Jeff Bezos? Amazon, Washington Post, right? So do you see, there has to be some cognitive dissonance there.
True.
Does that
They're
mean
at the
now
height-
suddenly I'm against Trump? No. What?
like because they're at the height of capitalism or conservatism or republicanism, as well as being kind of on that socialist side or advocating for more democratic party principles.
The problem is you have billionaires who game the system to become billionaires. And that doesn't mean they cheat. I'm just saying they work the system. They work very hard. They're very smart. They then implement systems and laws and so forth through their influence that make it so that no one else can ever compete. What's the only solution to that?
Get everyone else the same level of education so they can actually think at that level. And it'll take time.
Right, because you could say, well, just get rid of all the regulations and people will work their way up. But the problem is, if people are still at that level, are they going to be more open to manipulation by the billionaires who just want them to vote for bullshit that is more regulations?
Yes.
Exactly. And then with
Those are
social
the exact
media,
people.
Yeah.
You see, this is the exact problem is the conservatives, Republicans, they don't like the liberals and they don't like the Jeff Bezos type people because they're trying to manipulate everybody through their influence. And it's not Jeff Bezos, it's all these people, right? Influence everybody who's stupid to vote for stupid shit based on emotional reasons that is going to ultimately end up hurting them. And then, but what's the solution then? Should you regulate Amazon? Should you regulate the billionaire's power? You can't say that, can you? Should you regulate the media so they can't say certain things? Do we have
Why
freedom
don't
of speech?
Just become smarter so that we can have the ability to think critically and see through them trying to manipulate us.
It's the only solution. You see, it's the only way we can end this once and for all. Because obviously tearing down the system like the left wants to do makes no sense. Like, I don't want to go back to the dark ages and have to reinvent science like they did. Right? That doesn't make sense. But on the other side, the problem is no one's listening to each other and they're never going to listen to each other. You see?
Yeah.
There's never going to be anyone listening to each other, especially now because what social media does, it says, oh, you like Candace Owens? Oh, you might like this guy. Oh, you might like this guy. And suddenly they're like, you might like fucking David Duke, you know? Like, you're like, what? And suddenly you're like, oh yeah, Hail Hitler and all this shit. You're like, whoa, that just started off on like a Brandon Tatum post or something. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying those people actually are aligned with that stuff. I'm just saying it goes and it reads you and it's like, So you never hear anything else.
And
So
and
suddenly
what it is
you're
as
like,
well, what
what?
it is as well is like you inch that way, and then what you see from the other side, whichever side you're on, is like some extreme retarded bullshit. So then you go further, a little bit further on your,
You're only going to see the most extreme part.
and then
Mhm.
That doesn't mean it's not
further and
happening.
Yeah.
Right. And so it just feeds it. So it's this emotional complex that becomes you hate the other side.
Mhm.
And if their side would just stop, our side would win, which is literally the same thing as the spiritual warfare battle you were talking about.
Mhm.
It's if this side just would prevent, and like, think about it. People on the right actually think that the left is people like who worship Satan and the devil, and they hate God and all this stuff. And you're like, do you really think half of the country actually thinks that way, or they're just human beings like everybody else? And this is the part where it's like the judgment comes in, where it's like you're better than other people because you believe in Jesus, and Jesus, the blood of Jesus saves. You're like, do you even understand how retarded what you're saying is? They're like, because we killed the most amazing human being to ever live, and he bled on a cross and bled out for us, we are saved and cleansed. And it's like, okay,
Well, if
then
we
how
eat
come you
them-
haven't figured out a way to make sure every child in the world has food?
But saved
What has-
from what? Saved from what?
from your damn self because you were born a sin?
Yeah, yeah, safe from their own self-judgment.
Yeah, but I
That's
still
all
have
it
to
is.
deal with myself every day, and I'm
Right.
still dealing with these same things over and over
Whoa,
again.
whoa,
And I
whoa,
still
whoa,
have to
whoa.
ask for forgiveness over and over again.
Whoa, whoa, whoa!
So I'm
You're
not
trying to be
actually
too
saved from it.
commonsensical about it.
So it's not anything about this life that I'm getting saved from. It's about life after this.
Well, you're thinking,
Okay, what it is it's more like when you save leftovers. It's for later. You don't save it for now. You save it for later.
for the here after when you're back at the dinner table and you're hungry again.
It's here, but it's after. And it's also
later.
not here, it's up there. It's
Yeah.
also
It's not
somewhere else.
here like in the next moment when you experience consequence. It's not the here after. It's the there later. Sorry, that's what
It's
I meant.
the
to say.
not, it's the yeah, the there.
Saving
Late-
myself from having to take responsibility in this lifetime.
Yeah.
It's everyone's responsibility to take responsibility for themselves, even if they have a different life, different environment than you did, which gave you advantages over them. So, hey guys, when you agree systemic racism is actually a real thing.
Yeah. From the context of you're born into an environment, that environment heavily influences you. And if you weren't born into the right environment, you're not going to get into the right places.
Like
Think about it as race, not being black or white or Asian or something, but as the elite bloodlines versus everybody else.
like the definition being or of a race would be at some point if you go and again this is very subjective. The word race, it's like a theory of at some point there's some similar genetic stock that we belong to, and poor white people and poor black people are more similar than a poor white person and a rich white person, or a poor black person and a rich black person.
And they're
So
actually getting people to believe like LeBron James has to experience racism on a daily basis, and it makes his life a living hell, regardless of all the stuff that he's got and the life and the fame and the money and everything.
His life sucks, dude. I would hate to be in his position. Wow.
And why is it that it's only now that he's talking about it?
Mm.
Isn't that weird? It's like only really over the last 4 years that suddenly everything has become racist. It's like some retard posted on Facebook and on someone else's post, and they were like, all you white folks, you wouldn't trade places with any black person, you know, ever. And I'm like, dude, I would. I mean,
What?
like from the perspective of my responsibility, no, I would not trade places with anybody.
Yeah.
It's just, in other words, I'm not going to try to get out of my responsibility to take responsibility for this body and where I'm at and in my context of this world. But if I'm playing the game, okay, if I'm playing
Of
the
what
game
that person was saying.
of what that person was saying, yeah, I'd like to be Will Smith. Yeah, I'd like to be Denzel Washington. Give me a break. Like, oh, but can you imagine having to be them and having all these, you know, everything you could ever want, and then someone thinks that you're inferior because of the skin color? Like, I wouldn't care what anyone else thinks. I already don't care what anyone else thinks, and I'm not them. Like,
Drake,
give me a
you were
break.
talking about that Booker T. Washington book about how they didn't refer to necessarily, and correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't necessarily refer to black people as the N-word. They referred to a certain working class of people.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That was really interesting.
Yes, it was really cool because and it wasn't even like the N word, it was Negro, you know. So it was like they had on trains, you know, they had the Negro class, and they had the white class, right? And what was interesting was Booker T. Washington explains how he observed there's a white man who was like, he looks white, he looks physically white, but he was considered a Negro because he was born into slavery, right? And so he knew this man and he saw him on the train. And when the, you know, train inspector came by to inspect everybody's tickets and everything, he sees this man and all of a sudden he's like dumbfounded. Like he doesn't know what to do, because if this man is white, then he should invite him into the white class. Like it would be rude for him to let him stay in the Negro class. But he can't just come out and say, hey, are you a white guy? You know, because that would be rude if the guy is in fact white, right? It'd be like, wow, how dare you? But if this guy's a Negro, he should not invite him into the white class, because that would not be his place. And then, you know, that would be basically degrading the white cabin, you know? And so instead, what he does is he starts looking at this guy's like facial features and all of this, and like inspecting the man himself to figure out if he should be in this car here or in that car over there. And finally he looks at the guy's feet and sees like his feet are really worked, and he's like, oh, you must be a Negro. Okay, I'll carry on about my day, you know? But also on the flip side of that, Booker T. Washington also observed there was a man who was causing a huge stir in one of the cities that he was visiting. And it was because he wanted to stay at the hotel and the hotel wouldn't let him. And he was making this huge fuss about it. And the problem was the guy was black, and the hotel's like, we don't let black people in the hotel. You know, that's just not what we do. And then it wasn't until it was found out that the guy was actually from like Morocco, and he's like a wealthy man from Morocco, that they're like, oh, we didn't realize you weren't black. Oh, okay. Yeah, you can stay here. That's perfectly fine. It was the fact that they had thought that he was a black American. And so it's really not even about the color of the skin. It's a class system, like we're saying right now. You know, it's really, and it shows that those are like actual accounts, but that's not anything that's unique to just Booker T. Washington walking through the streets. You know, if you read, you know, Uncle Tom's Cabin or books of that time, they explain the same thing, how, you know, many slaves were so fair-skinned that you would think this is a white person, you know? And then
meaning when you say fair skin, you mean they were actually white.
They were actually white.
Not like they were black people with light skin.
No.
They were white people.
They were white. They had white features, and they got by as like, if you didn't know that they were so-and-so's slave on so-and-so's plantation or whatever, if you didn't know them, you just saw them, you'd be like, that's a white person.
But most likely that person would never go and try to do the things that the average white person would do.
Right.
You know what's fascinating about that is it actually makes sense when they say that the race is more cultural than genetic.
Yes.
Because what you're basically saying is that is actually how it was back then.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the people who are like arguing that the most important thing is racism and ending racism, the anti-racist, whatever, they're also conflating it and saying it's like it was just based on the fact that people were black.
Mm-hmm.
But then they're saying race is not really about. You see, I don't even know how to put it into words because it's so disingenuous the way they switch back from one to the other. You know what I mean?
It's like the color of your skin.
Oh, go ahead.
The color of your skin is the reason why you are not treated properly. But then at the same time, they say, you know, the color of your skin is not your race. You know, so it's just.
Or like they're like, okay, like if you're like, I'm voting for Trump, they're like, what? You're black, and you're like, you have to be like, oh yes, my skin color is dark. However, my views are not those of the lower class. I have
white views. I'm a white.
You know what I mean? Like you'd have to say like, my views are not those of the class that you are referring to. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, you are of this class.
Right.
And it's like, but you're still the same. Do you see what I mean? Like, oh, you're not black. So it's fast. I never heard this particular point, but it makes perfect sense. Like that is exactly what's going on. Like
it's
this
funny.
is crazy.
It's funny hearing you say just that phrase, "You're not black," because that just triggered within me. I just remembered, going to school, the way I speak doesn't sound like the typical on TV black person.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I know this is the case for a lot of black people,
Avery, you ever hear Avery tell that story? I'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I talk to people on the phone, and then I'd show up at their house, and they'd
You're
say,
like,
"Wait, you're black."
oh shit.
Right, exactly though. But it's like people would come up to me in school. I remember this in like elementary and middle school. They'd be like, "Why do you sound like that? Like, you're not black. You don't sound black." That's what they would say. And I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know."
How do black people sound? Can you tell me?
Right. I didn't know how to
Somebody
respond
was
to that.
telling
as a
me-
kid,
Somebody was telling me how people of color feel when they go to the mailbox or drive, and I'm like, that's interesting. People of color feel like really insecure at nighttime. Is that right? And they're telling me, and I'm like, I don't think you realize what's happening here. Like, I'm that POC. Like, I don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But this is people who are like white saying this, you're saying?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to tell you how people who would
I don't
potentially
think
look
they
like
realize
you,
that I'm a person of color. They're like, I was really acknowledging my white privilege. It was, I'm like, oh, what did you acknowledge? And they're like, oh, how POCs feel like when if they go to the mailbox late at night, or if they're just driving by themselves and getting profiled and all this stuff. I'm like, that's news to me. Damn.
I didn't
it's
even know
interesting.
POCs was a thing.
I think it's a little more Canadian. I don't know.
Oh no, people are using it here now, and I don't like the term.
Oh,
It sounds very much like POS.
Yeah.
It does.
I'm just saying, like
That's
in
what
terms
I'm
of what
saying.
it sounds like associated wise. I'm like,
POS.
I don't like the term anyways because it's stupid.
I think of POW.
The POS is a
Probably accurate too.
piece of shit.
Okay.
But it's
I
like,
wanted to clarify Drake's
Yeah.
point for people who missed like what that point was about. Was like, again, to clarify for anybody listening to this, you might hear that and be like, see, people get discriminated based on the color of their skin. Like first impression, color of your skin, that's what people are being discriminated against. But the only reason is because the indication of where you were in terms of money. That's the only reason why it mattered.
because
No.
once they found out that they had,
Once they
it was like
discovered
they were
that-
higher status, they didn't have
Exactly.
a problem with their skin color.
So, and Guion has that amazing Facebook post where he's talking about in South Africa, as you rise higher and higher and higher, they don't give a shit about at the top about if you're white or black or yellow or green or whatever. They don't care. Are you going to go along with what we want to do? And the same thing of how they have to keep, like in South Africa, I don't remember the details exactly, but they need to just maintain a certain, 15% of poverty rate. They need to maintain a certain percentage of people who are poor. They don't care if they're black. They don't care if they're white. There just has to be this amount of people who are poor so that they can implement the government programs so that they get millions and millions of dollars off the top of that. But it's like the point of that, the value in that is they're actually focused, or they're not focused on shit that doesn't matter. Now, there is probably I experienced racism. I don't give a shit because I experienced.
But wasn't it a individual sort of thing?
Individual, exactly. It's
I
like
experienced that too.
exactly. It's like
Like
my
when I
brothers
grew
used to
up
make
in
fun of
South
me for
Houston, I
being
was
fat.
the only white kid in my school, and they
Wow.
would call me a little white hoe on the bus and I also had long hair, which was great.
People call my dad like Osama bin Laden and shit. When that was hype, when that was cool. But my brothers
But to be
made fun of
clear,
me.
your dad's not.
No, he's not. No, that's right. But my brothers made fun of me way worse than like people being like.
So your own brothers were racist to you, is what you're saying? Oh,
But not
just made
because of
fun
color of
you.
my skin. It's like they were just like, "You're a fat piece of shit," like you pig and all this stuff. It's like racism's not special.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like the individual
Okay.
racism.
Okay. I also want to say this before we get too far off. Like,
Right.
it's like we're teaching entire generations of children right now. Forget about everybody else. That it's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
That we're teaching children right now, because remember, it's always about the children. Like, it's at the point now where this is at the elementary level in schools. Okay, where you will see an elementary teacher with a Black Lives Matter thing or a rainbow flag or whatever. they're teaching children that white people are racist and basically all black people are oppressed, and it's because of the color of their skin.
Wow.
But children don't have the context, like, because like what you're basically saying, I'm like, wow, I it's not that anything you're saying is surprising to me or it like changes anything. It's
But
just
it's
now I'm
putting the
seeing that
pieces-
there's a context where even in the past, you know, I was actually having this discussion with Katie the other day, and I'm like, everything people think about slavery is a lie.
Yeah.
Meaning the only image that person has, when the average person, the image they have in their mind, you guys tell me if I'm wrong. They imagine a black dude with no shirt on, probably like some white sort of like cloth-like type pants, and maybe they're even like frayed at the bottom and they don't even go all the way down. And he's getting whipped by some dude in like a nice like vest with like a hat, you know, and like maybe even a mustache, and there's like a horse, you know, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
slavery.
Yeah.
But there was lots of slaves who were like indentured servants. I'm not justifying any of it. I'm just saying they were like getting paid, and or eventually they'd own some land, or they'd be free at a certain point. There was all kinds of stuff going on. And there was also the dudes getting whipped. But can you imagine right now, there's some fucking guy who owns a business and he treats his employees like shit, and he even fucking hits them, but they're too afraid to say anything because it's just like, well, that's just the way he is, and like, I need this job or something. Like, they don't have a choice, you know? And what happens is we take the most emotional image, and then it's like, that's everything. So then suddenly it's like, well, of course, everybody in the past must have been extremely racist to allow that to be such a commonplace thing. And it's like, let's assume for a moment that it's not how it was. That was some of it, but that's not all of it. But then look at right now. You go to the average job, you go to a restaurant, you know, the people are there, they're working, they do their work, they go home. Right? Okay. Not the best thing, but it's what it is. You go to work at Amazon. It's fucking horrible. You know what I mean? According to what people say. So imagine 30 years from now, like, imagine everybody that had a job, anybody who was employed anywhere, was like you were an Amazon worker. Or like literally everybody who has a job was like working in a sweatshop. Because when we think of sweatshops, we're like, dude, holy shit, that's terrible, right?
Yeah.
But isn't that basically the same image of like being a slave?
Yeah.
Like you're working in this sweatshop and it's like somebody's yelling at you over a bullhorn and you're like sewing kids' soccer balls together or something, you know? But we don't imagine everybody who has a job had that, is like working in a sweatshop. And that's how it looks to me, like when they talk about slavery from the past, again, it doesn't justify anything. It's just that they use the most extreme emotional image to then persuade people about something that has nothing to do with that. You know, like, what is the point of why is racism such a big deal right now? Why is it like that's all anybody's talking about anymore?
Black people are dying at the hands of white people.
Okay, but that's not really what's happening. So I'm saying
That's
the emotional.
It's the most polarized reality that they can come up with. It's like, this will give the most energy to me, and to other people it'll get them to react the most. Like, it's the thing that we've hyped up the most right now, and so it's the easiest to talk about and get a charge out of other people.
What does political correctness mean? And I agree with what you're saying, but it's like, what does political correctness mean? What does it mean when something's politically correct or politically incorrect?
So politically correct would be when it's polite, essentially, and no one can be mad at you for saying so.
And if you have the opposite statement or opinion,
if you're politically incorrect, you're just blunt, really, is really what it comes down to. But politically incorrect,
You're saying
like,
something in a way that somebody doesn't like.
yeah,
but you know what I'm saying? It's not an approved opinion.
right.
Yeah.
Political correctness isn't about whether you agree with it or not. It's just that you say it, and it's like you said. I like what you said. It's like polite.
Yeah.
Very weird. Polite and political is almost the same word.
Yeah.
So it's like you're being polite. You're saying the thing that everyone accepts is the right thing to say. It's like back in the 60s, if somebody said Negro, they probably aren't getting all up in arms about it. I mean, maybe some people did. 50s, whatever the hell number, right? Okay, for example, black. If I say, oh yeah, I saw this black guy over here, or I saw this white guy. No one cares.
Right.
Maybe they do now. Maybe you say it's African American. Now it's person of color, right? But 30 years from now, do you think it's going to be politically correct to even say African American?
I mean, that's already something that's like semi not politically correct.
Is it?
Yeah,
because people who aren't actually African American, but they are a person of color, that can be misunderstood as African American. Say they're
like a lot of black people that live in the States. None of us came from Africa. I mean, not like in recent times. You know, we've had generations that have lived here at least. You know,
so you can already see the
86,
evolution of that
you know?
becoming not politically correct.
But
you
that
know,
would
like
be somebody walking up to me and saying, "You damn Norwegian."
Right. Okay.
Like,
what about the term colored?
Norwegian. You're just
What about
assuming
the
that
term
correct.
my color.
Right. So colored is not politically correct, right?
Not politically correct.
But person of color is.
And you know, it's funny. Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
You know. I don't know
Cucumber,
that guy. He did an interview like just a couple years ago, I think, just like 2 years ago, where he was saying colored people, right? And in the UK, that's more acceptable.
Same in South Africa.
Term. Yeah, to use the term colored, but in the US, we have a thing against that, you know.
But the NAACP,
yeah,
is said so colored people.
What NAACP?
NAACP.
What's
National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I don't know a lot about the organization itself, but it's like a major sort of, I guess, civil rights group for black people, right?
Right. Yeah. No, for colored people.
But it's got the word colored people in the name. And I'm assuming it was probably created at a time when that was a normal thing people used to refer to black people.
Yeah.
So the word itself has become politically incorrect, though. If you'd be like, oh, yeah, I saw some colored people at the store, people be like, the fuck is this racist?
Yeah, but I'm a person of color. It's just not a dark color.
Your color doesn't count.
Like, look at this. I'm here.
Drake,
like,
would you eat her potato salad?
color.
No.
What did you say?
I said, would he eat your potato salad? That's how he judges whether you're black or not. They were joking about the difference between black and white family reunions. Yeah. He was like, I wouldn't eat y'all's potato salad.
Yeah, man. They were saying something about cultural appropriation, like some comedian, how dumb it is. And like, they're like, so what? Is using spices cultural appropriation for white people? Like, if white people use spices, is that cultural appropriation?
Seriously, if I put salt and pepper on my food?
Like, yeah. That's fucked up.
I use a little bit of chili pepper.
Yeah, if you use anything spicy, that's Indian cultural appropriation.
Okay, but hold on. So here's the point I was trying to make about the
correctness.
Right. Okay, so this is just kind of blew my mind when I realized this point. So clearly, these words we're talking about politically correct, incorrect, and so forth, right? I want to see what y'all think about this. Wearing a mask is politically correct.
Yes.
Not wearing a mask is politically incorrect.
Yes.
Depends on your definition.
No. I mean, really, in terms of the context of
where we're at,
where things are actually at, wearing a mask is politically correct. It's no different than saying I support Black Lives Matter.
Wearing a mask is accepted as an acceptable opinion. Like,
why do people always say they do it? Generally speaking,
for others. I'm doing it for others.
They care about other people. So it's like, why would I not say colored people or something? Like, because it's offensive to other people.
Mm.
Do you see what I'm trying to say? Like, meaning it's become just another symbol of political correctness. So people say like, why are you making the mask a political issue? Just, blah, 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 because people who don't want to wear it. It's like, it is a political issue.
It is, yeah.
Whether it's also a medical issue or not is not the point, but it has become and from my perspective, it's purely political. It's nothing else, right? But you could make the argument about the medical part. This is just a separate argument. But it has 100% no doubt become a political thing. Why else are people wearing pictures of themselves with a mask or posting pictures of themselves with a mask on? Why would you ever take a picture of yourself in a mask? Except if you're like out doing some action thing and like you have the mask on and you just, that's when you took the picture. Okay. But if you're like going to do a selfie, why are you wearing a mask in it? That's the point.
That selfie looked awesome. And it's approval seeking. That's exactly
what
it
is. It?
Wow.
Approval seeking.
That's what I
like,
mean.
Y'all to like me and realize like I'm a good person. I got my mask on.
Wow.
I'm here for you. Stay home, stay safe.
That's the same reason why most white people or anybody for that matter supports Black Lives Matter. they don't actually care. They're just doing it because it's politically correct.
I don't think most white people actually support Black Lives Matter. When you say most
No.
white people, you mean like
That do.
That you see.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
The reason why most people that do in any way say they support it, it's because of political correct. Most everybody.
Yeah.
Now, there are people who genuinely feel like it's really important, but they're just misinformed, right? But I'm saying, generally speaking, the reason why people do it is because it's politically correct. Do you see what I'm saying? And so it's become, why is the NBA and all these other people doing it? It's just political correctness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if you guys saw this, but when Trump was doing his speech about, it wasn't the announcement. It was I think it was before. It was before the announcement for the Supreme Court justice, right?
Uh-huh.
He was doing a rally and he was like, does anybody here, raise your hand, does anybody here have a problem with me nominating a woman to the Supreme Court? Right? And then he goes, I didn't think so. He's like, there's not one man out here with the guts to say he disagrees. He's like, you're all cowards. And I'm paraphrasing it, right?
Uh-huh. That's hilarious.
And it's like hard to tell. Was he just joking or was he serious? Like, okay, well, I guess I have to fucking nominate a woman to the Supreme Court then, because no one wants to fucking say, like, why are you having to nominate a woman? So, like, think about it. I'm not saying, because I can't read Trump's mind. I don't know. But maybe he knows politically he has to. Like, if he doesn't, there's no fucking way in ever that guy is going to get through in this climate. There's just no way it's going to happen. Because whoever he nominates is going to be the biggest rapist on the planet. He'll literally have raped every single woman that's ever lived. Even if the guy had cut off his dick when he was 12. Do you know what I'm saying? Because he's trans or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying, though? You see how what I just said is politically incorrect?
Yeah.
I'm making light of cutting your dick off.
No, that's
But you're not allowed to say that, are you?
Because you're a man, and so, you know, all men can cut their dicks off for all I care.
No, but he's not transgender.
No. Hey, hold on. A woman just as much as a right to cut her dick off as a man.
If you say transsexual, it's wrong too. It's politically incorrect.
Transsexual. Yeah, see, exactly. Before, that was just what you called it. Now it's transgender.
I heard the story recently. So Malat's a speechwriter,
Get rid
right?
of all men, because
Malat's
women
a
have
speechwriter.
guys.
And
I think women can have the biggest penises, bigger than any man. A woman can have a bigger penis than a man.
You would do it better.
As a microcosm of it.
What? What'd you say?
I said I think the women embody the penis, and the men just have a microcosm of it.
Yeah, true. It's like the penis is a micro representation of what a woman really is.
Exactly. Yes.
So women should do it better. Women could do it better.
I'm trying to understand what that means. Because you piss everybody off?
It's just bullshit, Karen. Don't even worry about it. If you shave your beard, you'll understand.
What were you saying about Mela being a speechwriter?
So she's a speechwriter, right? And her team is like good at speechwriting. And one of the ministers, like the higher ups, were like, everybody start learning from this team because they're smart. And so she submitted a speech. I don't know, her team, whatever. And somebody had corrected it from transgendered, and they switched the word to transsexual.
Oh shit.
And they were responsible for, like, you know, political correctness, basically. And then the minister gave that speech, and they got torn apart, like just destroyed. They were like, there were so many, like, there was such a big response or reaction to them saying transsexual, and they fucked up really badly. So then they had to write apology letters. But like, now they have to write an apology speech, right? But that thing alone,
filled with transsexuals.
They're like, just don't use any nouns whatsoever.
Don't say they, don't say he, she, don't say anything. But the
use
point
all
is,
passive voice.
Just say people.
yeah, people. That's good.
No, just use passive voice. You don't have to say who did what.
But that's the thing. In speech
the
writing,
ball was hit.
in speech writing, passive voice is like a crime.
I know, it's a catch-22. Yeah. It's like, fuck.
And so
it's not a hate crime though, so at least you got that.
Yeah, true. It's the worst of the better of two evils, right? But yeah, I was just considering that point. I was like, man, That's Canada's biggest issue right now. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. That's
like-
what people are outraged about. That's what I'm saying too. Like when people talk about Trump and then they're like, you know, he dumped all the fish food out when he was dumping, you know, was with the Prime Minister of Japan.
Oh yeah.
Right. And they were like, what an idiot, all this
What-
stuff. And I'm
what
like,
happened?
it was like some ceremony or something they do where like they feed these particular fish in the pond.
and
I
he
don't
fed
know.
way too much.
No, all it was is at the end of it, they just dumped the rest out. So they clipped only that part. So it looks like he's some fucking idiot dumping all the food. Because, you know, everyone knows you don't want to feed fish too much.
Yeah.
But literally, the prime minister did the exact same thing. It was just they clipped out the part where he did it. So he didn't do anything out of the ordinary. It was totally normal, but they made it look like, and then they gave the context of, look, he's such an idiot, just dumps all the food. Oh, you know, like, what a retard. Like, he's just like, duh, like, that's what he did. That's not what happened, right? He was just doing exactly what everyone else was doing.
Wow.
But the reason I brought it up is because imagine, okay, it's 1939, Nazi Germany. Hitler's in power. The Jews are being killed, but left and right by the millions and all this stuff. And the people writing the articles are like, can you believe what Hitler just did? He like totally just like dumped all this fish food out and like these fish ate all this fish. Can you believe this? And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, but
No one would
it
care.
sounds stupid,
Yeah.
but people actually believe Trump is Hitler. Like he's literally a Hitler. But what they complain about is the most stupid shit. Like it's always like, can you believe this orange-skinned idiot? Like he actually said that, and you're like, so that's what you're complaining that Hitler did today? Not all the people he murdered today? So that's what's interesting about the coronavirus thing is the whole thing was, you know, I always say, I try to get at least one thing that will get us deplatformed in every episode. That way I don't have to do this anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
Finally.
we'll just create the next podcast.
Yeah.
Um,
The perfected self.
How many podcasts can we get deplatformed? I think that's the ultimate goal here. We need to step up our game because we're like 15, 16 episodes in. We haven't even been.
we still haven't been
What the
deplatformed.
hell? That's crazy.
Okay, at this
Well,
rate,
yeah,
it's going
hang
to
on.
take so long for
What's
us to
Cameron
go
gonna say?
through all
This
of
could be.
What was I going to say?
Yeah.
Talk about coronavirus.
You said
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Hitler. What is this?
Well, no, all I was going to say was it's clearly way fucking overblown. Like,
No, you're talking about
100%.
coronavirus.
Yeah, I know. No, I'm just saying it's clearly way overblown. Like, it's not at all what's being represented to be. You know, and like this whole thing with the CDC revising their numbers, and it's like totally insane. And even if you just take the numbers before they got revised, it's like, okay, 200,000 people have died in the US, apparently. Okay, like how many people die from car accidents and shit? You know, like what's weird to me about it is how we've totally just everything has not everything, but kind of everything has just suddenly changed.
The most change I've ever seen anything get changed for.
Like a real fundamental change, and it's suddenly just everyone's like, yep, and we're just all doing this now. It's like we were all going that way, and then suddenly we're all just going this way, and no one even it's like, yeah, that's what we're doing now. We're all going there. You guys, you've seen Wall-E, you know, when when they're wearing the red, and then like today's color is blue, and then suddenly all of their things change to blue. You know,
Yeah.
that's what it's like. It's like suddenly everything has changed, and everyone's just like, that's totally fine, normal, everything. And also, okay, we all were saying this from the very beginning. We're like, guys, this is not just we're going to wear a mask for a week or a couple months. This is permanent. This is forever. This is going to be normal now. And everyone's like, oh, come on. Can't you just wear it for a month? Like, what are you, what is your masculinity so fragile? You can't just wear a mask, you tough guy, you know? And it's like, I'm saying they're making major societal changes that we're all going along with. And it's not going to just be for a month. And even just Joe Biden, I read this just on Twitter, so I don't know if it's totally true, but he had suggested before, I know, that there would be a national mask mandate. And I just read something today that he said, yes, there will be, when he if he becomes president, that he would make a mandate. So
Yeah.
Who? Biden?
apparently he said that
Biden-
again.
Yeah,
Before he
wrote-
wasn't sure if he could or something, and I guess maybe he found out he could or something. I don't know. But again, so put it
Nobody
all
should
together.
wear a
Put all
mask.
the context together.
So
okay.
dumb.
Put all the context together. Black Lives Matter, political correctness, racism,
Racism is more
Wearing the
deadly than the
masks.
virus.
wearing
So-
the masks. Joe Biden says he wants to have a national mask mandate. In other words, he's signaling, I will go along with all the political correctness.
I swear I saw videos of Biden earlier being like, "There's no need to make a national mandate out of a mask."
He changes his mind on it. He says whatever's politically expedient.
Yeah,
No.
like we should definitely make a National Mask Day where we celebrate all those who actually wear the mask. Because
That's a good idea.
it's another reason to celebrate and another point where we can stimulate the consumers to consume more things where we can make more money. So this needs to be implemented sooner than later.
Yeah, like how many? There should be.
Hold on,
masks
hold on.
with the
Hear me
US
out.
flag
I
on.
don't know if you were addressing what I was saying or not, but I'm saying a mask mandate, meaning everyone has to wear masks at all times.
Oh, yes. As well as a national mask
Yeah,
day.
okay. I didn't know if you were just making a joke or that's what I was saying. Meaning he's saying there has to be a mandate, like we all have to wear masks or something.
Yeah,
I don't know
like,
what the details are.
every
Which
Right.
is
So
really insane.
what is happening right now is a society is moving towards whatever you feel pressure to do, you'll just go along with it.
Yep.
Not whether it makes sense or not. And how easy is it to manipulate a very vocal group of people? Drake. I have to, you know it's coming. You know it's coming. If I wanted to get one specific group of people to that nobody else would fuck with, okay, to be like my arm, my
Your mob, your gang,
my cheerleaders, my, you know what I'm saying? Like,
your henchmen.
who would that be?
That'd be me.
No, it would be you. I think it would be black women
Oh yeah, for sure.
because nobody's gonna fuck with them.
Oh, for sure.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are all like, oh shit. But what I'm saying is like, you're not gonna fuck with them.
Yeah.
Like, did you guys see that video of that black woman on the plane?
No.
I posted it. I don't know if I posted it or not, but and like it was like basically apparently what I understand is she, like, I guess the flight attendant was trying to get by while the woman was waiting in line for the bathroom, I think. And she was like, "Can you move?" And the black woman was like, basically like, like, you know, this is like her. It was like that kind of attitude of like, "Nuh-uh, girl, like, you back the fuck off," kind of thing, right? I'm doing my best impression. And she was just like, you know, it was funny because she was like, so the flight attendant was wearing a mask. See, I say flight attendant, I can't say stewardess anymore. She was like wearing the mask, right? And she was like, "You sit down, little girl. You are wearing a mask. You are controlled by the government. I am a queen. Okay, you don't run this country anymore.
No
we
way.
do." No, I'm not even doing a caricature. That's just my best way of doing the impression of
That's
what she was
awesome.
actually doing. I was like, I'm telling you, there was a point where I was like, okay, in a certain sense, I respect this person
Yeah.
more than the other person because she's like, doesn't give a fuck. You can see that.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean I agree with everything she was saying, but at the same time, it was pretty cool because you're seeing like, okay, like the time when people think that just because you're born into a certain position, that automatically means you should just not have to focus on what's best for everybody is over. Whether you like it or not, it's over. And so if there is such a thing as white privilege, it's over. Like, and whether you have Trump or Joe Biden in office, it's over, you know?
Yeah.
Now, from a perceptual standpoint, right? Because if there actually is such a thing as systemic racism, where like just because you're white skinned, you get advantages and it's because of laws in the past and all this shit, that's probably not going to be over because those things are structurally still there. So structural racism, if it's a thing in itself, that's not going to go away. But the idea that, so it's more like, it's like the reverse, you know what I mean? And it's funny because, see, I don't personally feel any sense of like insecurity about this point, but Katie was making an interesting point. She was like, you have to understand, Cameron. She's like, you're a white man in this world and you drive a nice car. She's like, you can't be naive about things, right? And Katie's always looking at the practical side of stuff. I tend to sometimes go off into the depths of the whatever. But
Yeah, like-
I was like, you know, that's a fair point. And so it's interesting because if black people, if it's true,
explain what she meant by that though. For more clarity.
well, meaning, okay, let's just take it at face value that for many, many years, black people have been targeted in some way negatively because they're black skin. And I don't think that's false.
Mhm.
But I also, well, I'll come back to that. I think that that's what's happening now to people who are white. And I'm not saying that in the sense of it wasn't real for black people, but it is real for white people. I'm saying maybe it's happening to everybody. Because I'm not saying if it's happening to black people, it's stopping all of a sudden. But think about this. Like if you were a cop right now and you had to engage, especially if you're white, and you had to engage with a black suspect, you think you're going to be more or less likely to shoot?
Less likely. Extra caution, less likely to just even be anywhere near your gun or anything.
Like you're just going to be like, God, please, no matter, just don't let this escalate.
Dispatch, can you send somebody else to do this? Thanks.
Yeah. Can you send a
Yeah. You know, I think, okay, so I was looking at Joe Biden's, I know how to solve the black men getting killed by guns, right? I was looking at Joe Biden's Second Amendment or gun control rather plan or whatever. And part of it is he wants to implement this thing called smart guns, which is like they have the technology that like it won't fire if it's not the person who has the right fingerprint or whatever it is. Yeah, I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah. But he wants to mandate that all guns would have that, right? And maybe that's the way to go. It's like they should also have some kind of facial recognition. So it's like if you're pointing your gun at a black person, it won't fire. Because that would actually solve the problem on all sides, whether you're left or right. Because the left, they say that, you know, black men are being just murdered in the streets by police. Okay. But on the left side, not the white side, on the right side, they say, oh, but you know, 50 whatever % of all homicides are committed by black men. So
like
they're doing most of the
killings.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. See, but this would solve both problems.
The gun would it depends on who's the person who gets access to the gun though.
No, because if you have a gun, that's power, which is you're now a white supremacist.
Yeah, because everything is a power hierarchy, and so the point is the left is saying white people are killing black people. So if the gun sees a black person, it doesn't shoot. And the right is saying, what Cameron is saying is the right is saying that it's black people who are killing black people more. So if that same gun sees a black person, same thing, it doesn't shoot. Problem solved. And now we can go on to living.
What if it's like you hit your hand on it, it's like checking privilege. Ding, 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 ding.
Too much.
And then like you fire the gun and the bullet like turns around mid-flight and it's like yeah. And then like
denied.
And we have like this website where it's like a tally of all the privileges. And it's like who has privilege, and it's like all the white privilege, like a bar graph. It's like it goes down a little bit. And it's just the whole purpose of this bar graph. The whole purpose of smart guns is just to basically like level everything. So it's like those graphs just like even out over time.
And then on the side, like the Asian graph is still like all the way up here.
It's like a different chart.
They're not shooting guns.
I think you've completely solved the problem. That's it. We can pack up, go home.
I think I have solved the problem.
Let's wrap it up. That's great.
But you know, it's just fascinating to me because it's like all of this stuff is just political correctness. No one's actually looking at the real common sense behind any of it. And so it's like, okay, for example, if you don't want to wear a mask, right? You're automatically assumed, if it's a person who's politically correct, that you just want everybody to die. And then if you're like, yeah, but I mean, the numbers don't make sense. This virus is not actually killing everybody. Like, you don't believe science. So it's politically correct to say believe science.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually study science, like it's kind of like the first rule of Fight Club, right? The first rule of science is don't believe science. It's like, don't ever believe any of the conclusions you've come to. Keep testing it and trying to prove yourself wrong. That's the purpose of science. is the assumption is through that process, eventually you'll come to something that's more real because it's been tested. So it's less likely to be incorrect because you haven't been able to prove it wrong. That still doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah, that's something like I was looking at over the weekend. What a theory is in science, in the scientific method, right? A theory is basically a hypothesis that's widely accepted, but doesn't actually work in every instance.
Whoa.
Right? So, like, for instance, what is it? Plate tectonics.
Huh?
You know, that there's a theory that, you know, these the plates that the continents are on are basically moving in a certain way and all of this stuff, right? But there's thousands of reasons why that theory doesn't work.
What?
But yet it's widely accepted that this is what's going on.
So what about
Because the Earth is flat, Drake.
What's that?
it's flat. How the fuck?
But that's a cool point though, because the point is a theory is just something someone made up.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hypothesis.
I'm not saying there's no truth to it. I'm saying it's something someone made up as a way to explain something, and then because you can't see it directly.
Right.
That's
Right.
germ theory.
Right.
We're all
It's just a theory.
on a theory. We're all in a social experiment, scientific experiment to see if that's actually going to help. Well, it's not.
But you see what I'm saying though, and I know you guys get this, but I'm saying just for the listeners, all 10 of them at this point, right?
I think we're at 13.
Is it 13?
Yeah.
Good. Somebody out there was going to understand. We're looking for quality over quantity. That's our motto.
Yeah, good. Now we're down to 9. That's perfect. Okay.
It is a social experiment, but it's more way I see it as it's to see if we're willing to give things up that don't make sense.
Like
You
the
know what I mean?
hypothesis is a totally different hypothesis. It's like let's see how far they'll follow along.
And, you know,
But let me first say there is value in presenting theories, because then you get to test things and find out like what actually works in reality and what doesn't work in reality.
Yeah, but here's the distinction that I'm making, though. I just want to be really clear. A theory is just a hypothesis that's widely accepted. It doesn't make it true. It's just widely accepted. That's what makes it a theory. It's like, okay, everybody just agrees to this. But there are very many instances in the theory where it doesn't work out that way. It's not comprehensive, right? So it's not that it's wrong, but it's also not exactly like right.
It's not complete. It's not correct necessarily either.
Yeah. So it's just somebody came up with this idea and everyone's just going along with it. But go ahead.
That's what happens in like sitcom writing rooms. Like somebody has a good idea and they're like, no, that's bullshit. And then another person shoots one of their ideas and like, no, that's, and then like, no. And then one person is like, hey, how about we make the episode about this? And they're like, okay, I like that. Let's start doing the drawing board. Let's do the storyboard. Okay, how would that play out here? And then they just keep going and going and going and building it out and building it out and building out. And then they just make the episode. And then, so my point is like that point of how, I think it was on one of the past podcasts about the process that you described about dinosaurs, right? That was fascinating. It was fascinating about how, somebody discovered a bone and they're like, just a bone. And then they discovered some other bone. And they're like, I think it might have fit together like this. And then somebody else, they read that and they're like, okay. So if there was an animal like this, like that, there has to be some kind of flying animal like that. Well, how would that look? And that just grew out and grew out and grew out. And that idea was like fascinating. I was like, oh shit, Cameron's making me question my life again. Not my life, but just like the things
all
that
your
I've
dinosaur
accepted.
figurines into a box.
Yeah, exactly.
My Triceratops shirt, I can never wear it again.
I changed my bed sheets. Yeah. I
But like
my
Seneca,
bed
my
sheets.
daughter, she has a pet. She has a toy Triceratops she plays with. But like when she plays with it, when they ask us what it is, we're like, well, this is called a dinosaur. Like some people think that there were these things called dinosaurs that lived, and we don't really know one way or the other because we don't have definitive proof. But so we're not saying dinosaurs weren't real. It's all a deception to reinforce the flat Earth or the global Earth theory because of the Decepticons or this or that. And you're like, we're not trying to make our kids paranoid. We're just giving them context. You know what I mean? Like, this is what it is. This is what I understand, right? Like, if I don't know something, I'll say I don't know something, but at the same time, it always comes down to, okay, what's the common sense within it? Where's the application that makes it best for all? Same thing with climate change. A lot of people are so passionate about climate change, but, and I think genuinely, they're like, it's a problem. Like, we're all going to die, or it's hurting people here or there or whatever. But the people who are making the policies based on your consent because you think it's such a problem, they're not making policies that are actually going to solve the problem or are actually best. It's they're making policies that make things more competitive for certain groups and less competitive for other groups. And it's not about the actual thing. And plus, you could also go into all the points about how all the information is manipulated. I'm not even trying to go there. I'm saying that so it's the same thing with the whether it's the transgender, whether it's lesbian, gay rights, whether it's race stuff, whether it's the climate change. It's all something that you can get people really emotional about. So that if you say, I'm for this and I'm working on this, they'll be like, cool, got it, whatever, I'll sign off on it. They won't even look at the details, and none of that is actually in any way a real plan or proven to do anything. So when you actually start looking into the details, you're like, wait, all this does is make the United States less competitive. All this does is make men less competitive. All this does is make white people less competitive. It doesn't actually bring up Black people. It doesn't actually bring up the other countries. It doesn't actually make women have more. It only makes certain groups less competitive. So at the end of the day, if you look at it all as a whole in context, the political correctness is a war against competition of the elite, because it's just like just brainless following based on peer pressure. That's all it is. So the only way you can do that is if you make a bunch of people really focused on what other people think and care about. And so, I mean, I think political correctness has gone to the next level because probably social media. And I'm not blaming social media. It's not like it happened to us. I'm just saying because of the presence of it, it's been able to then infiltrate even more.
It's just
You know
the
what I mean?
acceleration.
It's used for that purpose. Yeah, it's used for that purpose, right?
So coming back to the point that we came to a while ago before we started talking about a lot of these points was the solution not being vote for Trump or Biden. The solution not being,
But do vote for Trump.
but exactly, not that it's going to solve anything.
It's not the solve. It's not going
at the end
to.
of the day. And why do you say that? Why do you say vote for Trump?
Because he's actually standing up for the United States.
Because
As in, like he'll be more likely to bring things into order again.
He's objectively better as a president than Biden.
I have nothing negative to say about Trump. So when I say he's not the solution, I don't mean it like some of these people will be like, oh, I like all this stuff about Trump, but I don't like his personality, or I don't like this. And it's like, I don't have anything I don't like about Trump. That's no issue whatsoever. I'm not concerned about the things he isn't, which is what most people are. They're mostly concerned about things that he's not. I'm more interested in what he's doing. And the things that he's doing make sense to me, right? So part of the problem is people don't really understand, I guess they don't understand what the United States really is conceptually. We've been heavily brainwashed to think that the United States is evil. You all agree?
Mm-hmm.
It's the most evil,
dumbest
country that's ever existed. Stupidest, dumbest, evil.
Fat.
Yeah. Don't care about
Hey,
any other people.
It's politically correct to think that the United States sucks.
Yeah.
But everybody wants to live here for some reason, and nobody wants to live elsewhere. Or if they do, they just have vacation houses at a nice beach or something, but you don't want to live in this.
I want to come to Canada because they got like manipulated.
Yeah, but I mean, they just banned AR-15s in Canada this year.
No, my AR-15. Fuck.
Hold on, but think about it, guys. Think about it. It sounds silly, right? But if you take, just take my opinion for a moment, just assume it's valid. What if it was the best way to defend yourself against someone else who is just trying to kill you, just take your shit, rape your wife, whatever? Like, what if it was the best way to defend yourself?
Okay.
The best way to defend yourself without hurting other people. Like, meaning, except people who are trying to hurt you. Like, if it was the best way to minimize any other problems and just defend yourself, and that's it. And yes, it can be abused, but let's assume that's not your intention and you're trained on how to use it. Then now ask yourself, why would they ban it?
Because mass shootings. I'll be the devil's advocate.
Most deadly shootings are not AR-15s. In
Hands
fact,
on.
most gun violence as a whole is not AR-15s. It's mostly
Well,
handguns.
Yeah, it's like what I think it was Marley, who's over in the UK, told us how there was a mass shooting over there, and then they did the massive buyback, or maybe that was in Australia or something. But it's like
It happened in both, I think. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a push toward that, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. is the last place where we actually still have guns.
Okay, yeah, but the people who want to do damage and do those negative things are gonna get the guns regardless of if it's illegal or not.
Let's just say let's say they don't even get guns. Let's say they don't get guns. Okay. They come into my house. They want to rape my wife. They want to molest my kids. They want to steal my shit. Right. And again, now I'm speaking a little bit outside of the context of just what's best for all changing the system. That's why you don't ever hear me going on and on about we got to do all this stuff, because let's change this fucking system. Right. Let's prevent it. Okay. But let's just say if I'm going to do that, I can't die. Yeah, if I want to do that, I'm still not going to let people rape my kids. Okay, so
What?
You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to make my whole fucking life focus about
That's
You're
just
so
defending my family. That's the most important thing, is got to defend my family. It's like, well, why are people coming after your shit? Why are people wanting to rape and all this stuff? Let's solve that problem. But I'm just saying, from the perspective of, let's look at how we're manipulated and so forth, right? I don't remember exactly what we were addressing there, but I'm going to just go back to this point. If it's the best way to defend yourself, okay, why wouldn't the government want you to do that? Or, well, I kind of gave the answer away, but isn't that what it is? Why would they try to take it?
Yeah,
To have more control.
But how does it give them more control?
by taking away your ability.
Through knowing that you don't, there's not that line of defense, so to speak.
Meaning what? What do you
What are they
mean?
gonna do, man? What the fuck? Or what does that open them up to being able to do?
Like, on the one hand, you could say, well, the people could revolt and all this stuff, and I'm not a proponent of, obviously, I don't know, none of you are, right? Of let's overthrow the government or some bullshit like that. That's not, we had a whole podcast on not just promoting revolution, right? But what I'm saying is, there is an argument that if the government knows everybody has guns, like they're not going to try to do too much shit and try to take away. But I think there's even something more subtle than that, which is, we were talking about even if they took all the guns. Okay, I want to go back to that real quick.
Oh yeah, that's what.
That's what it was. Okay,
If somebody came in your house.
somebody comes into my house, no one has guns, because Jess was making the obvious point of like, well, the criminals aren't going to fucking respect the laws or whatever. But let's say they could just get rid of the guns. Okay, hypothetically, right? Well, if some dude comes in my house with a fucking knife and he's like, I'm going to kill you and I'm going to, whatever, like, what are you going to do then? Do you know what I'm saying? So it's not like if you get rid of all the guns, you're still okay. People who want to try to hurt you or hurt other people or steal stuff, and that is the reality of the world we live in, they're still going to be able to go do that.
And to be clear,
Even
I wasn't
if there's
sure.
no guns, even if there's no guns whatsoever, right? What are you saying?
I wasn't sure if I heard you right, but yeah, Jess was saying like they're gonna still find a way to get guns anyways.
Yeah, but my point is, even if
they
make
did,
the argument that no, they couldn't get any guns or something, like, okay, I'm not
Yeah,
even going there. Like, they could still get a fucking crowbar. Like, it's, you
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
if I know I as a criminal want to do something and this person has essentially no way to defend themselves, like, versus I got a crowbar, I come into your house and you're like sitting there with an AR-15, I'm like, goodbye. Like, I'm not even gonna fucking try. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's game over. Like, you're not gonna do it. So my point is, let's just take a step back. Let's say there is none of that. You as a person don't have any way whatsoever, even hypothetically, to defend yourself or your family or whatever. And in the context of where we're at in this world, does everyone have what they need?
No.
Are people angry? Are people in lack? Okay, so is the solution everybody arms up themselves and we just fight each other off? Like, no, that's stupid. Okay, But if you're dedicated to, I'm going to make a difference in this world, I'm going to stand up, okay, then you have a right to defend yourself. Yeah. I would say more than ever, because the people who don't give a fuck, I mean, if they're not going to do anything in this world, that's up to them. Stand up, change the system, right? Through political means. But imagine like you don't have any way to defend yourself. It's not even a possibility. How does that make you feel subconsciously?
Scared.
So how are you going to get a sense of security?
Arming myself.
You can't, though.
Go along with it. Don't oppose. As in if I were in the government position, I'd be like the primary focal point being protection at all times. But whatever you do, you want to make sure you're not taking too big of a risk that it could wipe you out. So the last point of like, guys, let's do. Oh wait, they can still like kill us if we try to take their shit or whatever.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But what I'm saying is, as a human, as a person, not the government, you just feel like you need them to take care of you.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what I'm saying. There's a level where you feel like I need them to take care of me. Just like, for example, if all the grocery stores closed down, how would you feel?
Fucked.
Yeah.
You're not like, oh no, it's cool. We have a garden. We can make some food while they get everything back online. It's not a big deal. So as human beings, imagine if every person in the world was supported to have their own property, their own home, a family. They knew how to take care of themselves. They knew how to like grow food. Doesn't mean that suddenly we're all like living in the 1800s. You could still have grocery stores. You could still have all those things. But imagine how much more secure you would feel if you knew I could still take care of myself. Don't you think the nature of things would change a little bit? Like, okay, for example, if you don't even know how to cook your own food, you're totally dependent upon restaurants. You see what I'm saying? How many people, I bet there's a lot of people out there who literally just only ever
Eat out.
Oops, I lost my picture. Who only ever eat out. You know, I'm sure. Or they eat out most of the time. Mm-hmm. But when you cook your own food and you do it properly and you use good ingredients, like it's actually a lot better for you, especially if you're growing the certain things yourself. Like, you know how easy it is to grow lettuce? Why should any of us ever buy lettuce from the store, really?
How easy is it?
It's way convenient, but I'm saying it's not, oh, I mean, it's convenient to buy it at the store, but it's not hard to grow lettuce.
Cool.
Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe there's certain times when it doesn't grow properly and then it makes sense to be able to supplement it. But there's so much that we take for granted that we can't do just because there's already the convenience factor. So it's like we're totally dependent in a negative way on the system. Now, that doesn't mean we need to all go, like I said before, we don't need to all go become like doomsday preppers and shit like that. I mean, maybe you do right now. I don't know. Like maybe the system's about to fucking collapse and you might as well try to survive. I'm not advocating for that. But what I'm saying is, if we could create a society where people had a high vocabulary, they were educated, they knew how to do stuff. At a basic level, you would not feel the need for someone else to take care of you. And so now, ultimately, wouldn't it be also good for us to have systems that just take care of all of us?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, who runs those systems right now?
Corporations.
So do they really have your best benefit at mind?
Entities that have profit over people.
Yeah.
So until we change that, you can't ever even subconsciously trust those systems.
Yeah, because that's actually a law that they have to pursue profit.
The thing that makes sure you survive, all those things by law, don't care about your survival, only care about making money.
The stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so instead of making sure everybody had enough money, they were like, we need to get women out of the house and go work so they can put more money into the system. You know, like the system itself is not looking at what's best. It's looking at what makes more money only. And it doesn't always make sense what it does. You know, I mean, they're destroying rainforests and things like that. It doesn't make any sense. You know, if you could create your own clothing and you knew how to do it, let's say like the mother or even the father knew how to like create your own clothing. Would you need to buy new shirts at the Gap every fucking couple months?
No.
Like if you literally had like 2 shirts that like were really well made, I don't know how many you would need. Maybe you would need more than that. But, you know, like, why do you need to buy a new jacket every year? It's only because it's fashionable. You know,
Or 'cause your old
and they're
shit
made in a way where they don't last very long. Like I have to go through so many different pairs of pants because I always get holes in the crotch.
Yeah,
And I don't know if it's because I'm like unconsciously doing some business down there or what, but it's like, why do I always get holes in the crotch of my pants?
Sure.
You know, it's because they're probably made like they're pieces of shit. They're not made well, you know, versus if somebody knew what they were doing and they handcrafted, you know how much that would cost, you know, to get like really well-made clothing, but nobody's willing to pay it. Everyone wants everything cheap, you know? And it's like, I was talking about this with Drake, but it's like this one time we had an issue at the house and we called the cops and like, it ended up not being a big deal, but like they said they would take like 25 or 20 minutes to get there or whatever. Right. And we were like, Katie was like, man, you can't rely on them to come help you if you need something.
Yeah.
Like if that, cause it wasn't a burglar or anything, but like if it were, you're done. Like,
No,
you know what I mean? Like
we had that in, I think it was like December, like me can't get home real late, like after midnight. And I think it was after like a clubhouse and we had come home because we were all just hanging out. It was like 11 or midnight. And when we got home, I was going first and I saw the door was open, like actually open, not just unlocked, but it opened. And there, like where the bolt was, it was like broken. And I was like, so I called the cops and I could walk to the police station in like 2 minutes. It's like literally, I could see, you know, if I walk out to my balcony, I can see it. And they're like, we'll be there in like 10 minutes. I'm like, damn. I'm like, it kind of makes sense because they're out and about, right? They're not coming from there. It was like 10 minutes. It's wow. I have no choice. I have to wait, but I got surprised when I heard, I'm like, this is like an emergency. Like there's people in my house right now, you know? And I was like, so I give them a call. I'm like, yeah, we'll be there in about 10 minutes or so. And then slowly, one by one, they came.
See, but what if you had been in your house?
Exactly. Yeah. It's like if I was in my room and like I ran to the like bathroom and like I called them and they said 10 minutes, I'd be fucking shitting my pants.
Yeah.
Like I would be like being like ready to fight. And
See,
I'd
so
have to count on myself.
the problem is we have a world where a lot of people don't have what they need and they don't have a way to make money that's legitimate, right? So therefore they have to resort to things like that. Or it could just be that they're just angry and they're doing it for that. Like there's a lot of different reasons people do it. But at the end of the day, they're not having the emotional support and stability from a stable family. Their education is not effective. Yeah, because if all that was intact,
education. Both of those are education.
If all that was intact and somebody was still doing it, it'd be like they're choosing to do it. You know,
and now the flip side of that is because you know it's only recently where I heard you talk about guns and stuff, right? Because like you're saying, you're investing in that more. And I never really considered it. I was like, guns are evil. Like, fuck guns.
That's how I felt about it.
Exactly, yeah. And, you know, like, I'm sure there's people...
And I grew up in Texas with families where we hunt and we fish and we have guns and it's a normal thing. And I still felt that way.
Right. Like, and there's probably people listening to this and being like, oh, you're just like classic Texan, just wants your guns. Like, if you're thinking that, then you're not being smart. Like, you have to be able to put that aside and just listen, right? Because that was the same thing and the reason I'm saying that is because that's the first when you first mentioned it. I don't know when, but I was like, I was like, he's talking about guns, right? And I was like, oh wait, that's bullshit. I know your starting point, right? Mm. And I think a big thing that a lot of people that we know and average Joe's, all the things, we get confused about the idea of problem and consequence. As in, there's the world that we want and the world that we're in.
Right.
And there's certain things that have to be satisfied in order to have all of the world that we want. But for example, saying that we shouldn't have any more protection, whether it's guns or police and whatever, because that would be the ideal world where everybody's taken care of it, it doesn't make any sense right now. Because we don't have an ideal world. We don't have a world that everybody is, again, taken care of, where there would be no reason to try to take from somebody else. So it doesn't make sense to try to take all those things away. And I think it comes all the way back to what we were talking about at the start. Is like, if you're raising a family and you've already created a bunch of consequences, and then you think there's two sides of it. It's like, I don't want to change. And the other side is like, let's change everything and then like cross my fingers and hope that everybody just plays along. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It'll never work. You've probably tried it at some point in your life and it doesn't work. You probably even tried it with yourself. I'm going to go full on. I'm going to quit smoking, drinking, everything. And I'm just going to be like, I'm going to be celibate and things are going to be perfect. You probably kept up your habit or whatever you're trying to implement for yourself for like a week. Or you're like, I've never worked out in my life. I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week, you know, every week. And you stop at one time and then you fall off. Is because it's not taking into account how things actually change, right? And that's what we made the basics video on and self-perfected on, is about the way nature, like a tree or a plant, if you were to watch it, it grows and changes so slowly that you couldn't even tell up front if you were watching it. That's how nature works. It doesn't go from seed or where it's at to full grown, producing like fruit bearing tree. It's a gradual process. And what that looks like is really on an individual basis. If we're talking about changing society, it's all just an individual basis. Because that point of, you know, we're talking about Joe Biden's not the answer, Trump's not the answer, Q's not the answer, you know, ending racism isn't the answer. Like, none of those things are the answer. It just comes back to education or creating a world that's best. In other words, what that starts with is changing the inherent incentive system, which is the money system. And then before that, for you to even want to change that is for you to understand the problem with it and to see how to solve it. That's why it comes back to education. That's something that has to happen on an individual level, but we come together as a group to discuss. Well, basically, the reason why you need to be around people that you trust, have your best interest in mind, is so that you can say things and get feedback on what you're saying. Not because that person is trying to like pummel you into submission and they're smarter than you and better than you, but because they're like, oh, you're not seeing that right, and I want you to see what I see so we can discuss more. Because maybe I'm not seeing it right.
Or even more, it's like you're not being honest with yourself.
Yeah, that's usually,
you know what I mean? And that's like a big point about being in the group, is another person could say, you're limiting yourself right there. You're just holding on to some kind of reaction or belief or something. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I can see it.
Hey Drake,
you know,
can you share your screen or let me share my screen? I wanted to throw up that person, Kelsey, who just joined the group. She came on the first global hangout.
Yes.
And
can you do it without putting her last name?
Yeah, true.
Maybe you could just read it or something.
So I decided not to share it. Okay, but she made a post, right?
Whatever.
And she says, I just joined my first call yesterday, and let me tell you, I can feel my fire burning already. Asif Nazarali spoke everything with such truth that it really made me stop and think, what the fuck? Why is he calling me out like that? And that's probably the feedback I get most. After a call, people will be like, man, you hurt me a little bit on that call, but thank you so much, you know? And what she continues to say is, but it really made me realize that these kinds of people, I'll just read it exactly. But it really made me realize that people like him and people like all of you are who I need in my life. Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Mitchell, for introducing me to the best group I've ever been a part of. The thing that you would think you want least is people challenging you and making you feel bad. But what I've seen is the things that people value most is people challenging them. When your starting point or their starting point isn't to make you feel bad and your starting point isn't how you feel. It's when their starting point is, hey, you need to see reality more. And your starting point is, I want to see reality more. That's who we're looking for. The people who want their life to work, not because they stopped looking at everything that's wrong in the world. The people who want their life to work because they're actually considering how life works. And fundamental to that is you have to be smart enough. Like, you have to be educating yourself of how does this piece relate to this piece, relate to this piece, relate to this piece, and how does that lie fundamentally to how everything operates? Because, again, the first thing that I had to realize is that everything in this world is just done for money. Done for money or to feel good. And money equals feeling good. The more of it you have, the more you can just pay for whatever the fuck you want. You could have a full fucking amusement park in your backyard. You could fulfill any sexual fantasy you want. Just pay for it. Right? And understanding that fundamentally, it's like it puts things into perspective when you're looking at the different things that are being presented, or it pushes you to see why people are saying what they're saying, or trace the money line, like who owns this company and why are they promoting this completely unrelated thing, seemingly unrelated thing. And then you realize it's like owned by the same people, or like, you know, they have mutual interests and things like that. And so the point is, what we're bringing it back to is, yeah, the only actual solution is creating a new system. And the way in which you do that is by going into these groups, applying these tools so that you stop having all these cognitive delusions about how things work, and you start questioning everything so that you can see things clearly, work with people to actually make a change. Now, objections to that. Objections to why would creating a world that's best for all, first of all, why would somebody even want to do that? And how are we even going to get to enough people? Like, hey, do you guys really think that all these extreme left or extreme right people are going to get it in time to save this world? Is it even worth trying if all these people aren't going to get it in time? What would you guys say to that?
We'll figure it out. It's just, it's not a choice. It's just like, it's who I am. I'm just going to make it happen.
Also, they don't need to get it.
Yeah, it's just enough people need to get it who can get into the positions to actually change the laws to then create the system that's actually life-giving.
How many people who are voting actually even understand what they're actually voting for? So, you know, like it doesn't even really matter. I mean, it's not that that's our starting point is people not to understand, but it's like, that's like the other thing about Trump is the only criticisms people have usually is just stuff about the fact that he's selling. They don't say it like that, but they don't realize that's all it is. Like, he'll exaggerate stuff because he's selling, but the essence of what he's saying is still true. You know what I mean? So it like doesn't really matter. The details are kind of irrelevant in the context of you're getting a mass of people to vote for something. You know what I mean? So it's like little things like that. And sometimes, you know, like I love when they asked him, you know, would you accept the results of the election if Joe Biden wins? Right? Or something like that. And he was, or if it's, I don't know, whatever, right? If it's contested and then it turns out Joe Biden wins, will you accept the results? And he was like, I don't know, we'll see what happens, right? And everyone's like, whoa, he's not going to accept the election results and stuff. And it's like, that's just a basic persuasion technique. Like, keep your options open. I mean, I know if it comes down to it, like the Supreme Court says Joe Biden's the winner, Trump's not going to be like ordering the military to fucking come and, you know what I mean? It's like, that's just ridiculous. And it's rich coming from the fact that that side of politics still hasn't accepted the 2016 election. But my point is, you know what I'm saying? Like, in other words, there's points where people don't like it, but he's just selling. So we still have to sell it, you know, and in the purpose of this podcast is not so much to sell it as much as it is to look for people who can see through bullshit and want to stand up, you know, because this podcast itself is not designed to reach the masses, to persuade everybody. It's to find those few people who are like already looking beyond a lot of the bullshit, you know. That's why I like to, on one podcast we did, it was like all about how great Trump was. And now I'm like, if you think Trump's the answer, you're a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? Because it's not about promoting one thing or other. It's always about what's best and changing the system to do very basic, simple things. Very basic, simple things. That it's not that they aren't complex in terms of the implementation, but the concept of everybody having enough money to survive is very simple. I mean, all the governments mostly in the world just proved they could do it if they want to. You know, in the US, we still aren't implementing it fully because it's like the politics are just fighting each other. But the problem too is, like, you look in Canada, it seems like, oh, look how advanced Canada is. They're giving everybody that thing. Yeah, well, they're also taking away your right to defend yourself. So what's next? Are they going to make you all wear masks also? Are they going to make you like not allowed to misgender people? Are they going to make it, you know what I mean? Like what's next? Because they also pass a lot of crazy shit too. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean that it's bad for everybody to have money. You know? But then also, here's the question. Everybody's getting a check there. They're talking about making it permanent, right? It's not actually permanent yet, right?
Mm.
Let's say it is. What about education? What's their plan for actually really educating people? You know? So I think it's great in Canada because then you guys, it should be a lot easier for y'all to just get everybody techno tutor.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't, because you're already ahead in the curve of basic income potentially. You know, we're still a little bit behind here. But I think there's gonna be a lot more resistance to it here, most likely, right? But even basic income itself is not the final full thing.
Yeah.
You know, because we haven't really gone into equal money really in this podcast yet. But you know,
That'd be
it's
good.
a lot more than just basic income.
That'd be good to dot into because in terms of the objections, right? Of like, it took me a while to even understand why the money system is even the real fundamental problem. But it's like, you know, over the last couple of weeks, like the racism conversations have come up again. And it's just like such a basic point. I'd ask people, I'm like, do you agree that this money system requires poor people? You know, I had one person say, yes, but like, why are you saying that? You know, other money systems have that too. I'm like, no. I mean, this money system throughout the world, like it's all the
They
same
can't even
system, right? Right. But it was at that point where I was like, do you agree that it requires poor people? And then that's when they're like, okay, I can see that I don't see the problem as well as you do. Or like, you know, I don't have the full understanding of the problem. I'm like, yeah, like neither did I. But I just put aside the whole like, okay, yeah, like racism exists, discrimination exists all over the fucking place, right? And if you're suggesting that there has to be poor people and it shouldn't be black people and it should be white people, you're fucking racist. Like that's racist as hell. Because one of the things before when I was doing the little back and forth, I was like, you do understand that there's poor white people too. And they were like, are you trying to say that all lives matter? Like you're just trying to say all lives matter. It's like we've been designed.
It's like, do you disagree?
Like, but you know the whole thing about how the heteronormative thinking or binary thinking. It's like they're the most binary thinkers.
Yeah.
Like you're either on my side or not on my fucking side. No in between. And you're like, oh, hold up. Like, let's put that shit aside.
But it's like you have to be binary about things that are binary.
Yeah.
They're actually judging the word binary. I mean, computers are based on binary thinking. Like, it's called binary logic. It's like, we need to eliminate binary logic. It's like, well, turn your computer off and throw it in the fucking garbage then. Which is also an example of binary.
Because you don't like it.
But yeah, I'm saying like, what's wrong with binary logic in itself? Like, we can't think everything is not black and white. It's like, well, then why are you making everything black and white?
And so isn't the whole thing like, you know, oh, well, you don't believe in science, but it's the same people who are like, but there's no like single truth.
Yeah, everything is subjective.
It's like so crazy. Like, how do you get to any conclusions? You're like, okay, the way I come to decisions is I start this way.
They say believe science. Hold on. They say believe science. But then they also say the emphasis on the scientific method is white supremacy.
That's true.
We saw this recently.
Wow. That's right.
It's like the emphasis on rational, objective thinking. But then, so it's not about reality. It's about political correctness.
Yeah.
It's politically correct to say believe science. It's politically correct to say objective, rational, scientific method is white supremacy. It doesn't matter if they contradict each other. It's just what's politically correct to say. Yeah. And you don't say it at the same time. So if I was saying something that went against political correctness, but I was using some kind of scientific reasoning to do it, then it would be politically correct for them to say, well, scientific method, mathematics is all based on white supremacy, da 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 da. But if I'm saying, oh, I don't agree that the thing about climate change is really what they say, they're like, oh, but you got to believe science. You have to believe science. It's like there is no actual real common sense within the point. It's all just based on what. Oh, and here's the weird thing.
It's like fads or like trends used to be like over time, but now it's in a given situation. Like in a given
Exactly.
opinion, in a given
Right.
topic, what's the fad?
Yeah.
If you're on the side of political correctness, this is all I can say. If you're on the side of political correctness, you are on the side of the fascists. Because political correctness is actual fascism. That's why, think about it. Is it politically correct to say that Trump is a fascist?
It is right now.
It is. Right? It is. Is it politically correct to say that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization?
No.
Nope.
But who's actually out there in the streets burning shit down?
Yeah.
People who align themselves with that.
Like Antifa.
I'm not all those
is
people.
Anti-fascist. But if you don't agree with them, I swear.
Right. But it's like, of course, you're going to give yourself that name so you can just be a fascist. But that's like, you have to be real dumb to not see through that. You know? And again, this goes back to every time it's about education. It's about higher vocabulary. It's not even about, the problem is when people hear education, what do they think?
I gotta go to school. Like I gotta educate.
Yeah, like,
I have my sociology degree. Who the fuck are you to tell me that I gotta get educated?
like if I say, okay, here you go, ready?
Here we
I
go.
don't think women should go to college.
Are you fucked? You're fucked, dude. If we didn't get deplatformed before,
But my 2-year-old daughter can already do math and read.
Oh.
She's not even 2. She'll be 2 next week.
she's probably a white supremacist. Supremacist.
See, but now I'm up for emphasizing math and logic. But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean you shouldn't be educated. But I think college is a waste of fucking time. You see, that's the problem is you think education means this. So it's like, if I think women shouldn't go to college, I'm like, I don't think men should go to college either. I mean, that's where they're all raping each other anyways, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, but like, you know what they're not going to teach you in college?
Common sense.
How to garden. Do you know how long it takes to learn how to garden? It takes a lot of effort, a lot of focus. They're not going to teach you anything that you actually, they're going to teach you one set of information. And you're going to spend the rest of your time just trying to do the homework to learn that one thing of information. And then at the end of that, you don't know anything and you're totally, completely dependent upon the system. So it's not surprising so many people don't want it to change and they don't even realize that's what they're arguing for. So if you're on the side of political correctness, you're also on the side of the system. It is a function of the system to like give you the feeling that you're trying to change things and you're just going along with the latest fad. Isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's funny because those people think that they're cool. Like they're the ones on the right side. It's like, if you think you're on the right side, you're not. If you feel like you're on the right side. In fact, if you're on the right side, the best side, you should always feel like
you're against
kind of a little bit unstable and like, but you develop the certainty and the stability within yourself that you can handle that.
Like
if you're just feeling like everything's just working, that means you're a part of the system.
Yeah,
that means
because you're flowing with the river.
It means you're not challenging the system inside of you or anything in any way whatsoever. You're just going along with it.
If you feel like you're on the right side, you got sold.
That's
what I'm saying. Sold really hard. If you feel like you're on the right side, you got really manipulated. Sorry.
That's the real reason why people don't like Trump. Because he's really good at sales.
Yeah.
People don't like people who are good at selling.
Yeah. The most hated profession in the world. Sales.
But it's the most honest. It's the best. It's just communication. It's clear communication.
Because like honestly,
that doesn't mean you always say the things that are the 100% objective, factual. No one can disagree with it, because even with an objective fact is usually just an opinion. But what I'm saying is,
I don't know what I'm saying.
I want to hear this.
If somebody is
He's
saying
trying to be politically correct.
If somebody has I'm trying to be clear, right?
Yeah.
If someone has accepted that they will only make decisions emotionally, okay, and
or another word for that is morally,
or just they're only going to make a decision emotionally, or morally, whatever, and they're doing something that's not best. How do you get them to stop?
you change their emotions, you manipulate their emotions.
Right? Whose
Yeah.
responsibility is it how they make decisions?
Theirs.
Right. Now, what if they are not willing to educate themselves to the point where they can stop that and actually make decisions that are best? Is it okay to sell them initially using emotions to get them to look at something else and then do what's best for themselves?
Yeah.
I mean, we already accept that in this world for things that aren't best. What is advertising? You see what I mean? And it's just, we've all been programmed to dislike people who are good at selling other people and influencing. So
Yeah, but
everyone
that's all coming from a poverty mindset. Because that's the only reason why people don't like sales is because they don't have enough money to buy all the shit that people are selling.
Well, also that they're just not, they're not persuasive. They don't have a high vocabulary, so they don't know how to communicate. That's why they went to college. That's why they just have a job and they'll never create something.
You know,
That's why they're not part of the 0.1%.
at some point they got manipulated and they bought something and they didn't like it, and now they judge like being
And
sold.
there was like one person they
never-
heard about who was manipulative.
Right, exactly, right. And then now they're like judging selling, so they'll never realize that they're just being totally fucking manipulated by everything that's going on, because you're not willing to go into that, to educate yourself about what manipulation is. Like if you ever had a girlfriend or boyfriend, you are emotionally manipulative. If you were ever a child, you're emotionally manipulative. You were manipulating other people emotionally to get what you want.
Oh
And
shit.
if you don't understand that, then you gotta educate yourself.
The problem is the degree, like the level of your vocabulary will determine how much you can do that. Like
Mhm.
if you have a low vocabulary, it's like everybody's manipulative 100% all the time. But if you're not effective with your vocabulary, there's only a certain level to which you can manipulate people.
Mhm.
Do you know what I'm saying? But if you have a really high vocabulary like Trump, you can manipulate millions of people with your words. So, I mean, but if you have a low vocabulary, you can still be manipulative, but you can only manipulate like your spouse or your kids or like your employee or something like that. You know what I mean? Or your friends or whatever.
Drake, what were you gonna
Oh, I was just gonna say, oh shit, I was a child.
say? Weren't we all? Weren't we all?
Not all of us.
No? Yeah, you came out with the beard.
Yeah.
I came out with this shirt, but all the rest of you are gonna have to buy it at the merch store,
When that's open to the
which is
public.
not even possible actually for you to buy. So
It's not open to the public.
No, yeah.
So throughout all this, I see, I mean, it should be blatantly obvious by now, but we'll just reiterate it for the sake of making it abundantly clear, is the starting point behind everything we're doing, behind all this entire episode and all the other episodes, triggering people saying politically incorrect things, is to get you to realize that the current system, your current life, everything is automated for what's not best. And it's basically this giant game of who can get the most energy and the most money and who can manipulate each other to just get to this inevitable destruction, basically. And so what we're proposing and what we're doing on a daily basis, and for those that hear this and understand it, is working to fundamentally change the system so it's best for all, every race, all the genders, all of that. So we all have our basic needs met. And then from there, we can actually go on to the next level of humanity. So that is the common thread I see throughout all this. I just want to make that blatantly clear for everybody.
Mhm. And what you should see at the end of it is, yeah, if you're feeling any kind of anything throughout this podcast, realize it doesn't matter. Like it's a good thing to feel that, so you're aware of where like you're bumping up against yourself, because that's what actually keeps you stuck, is just like judging a bunch of things as like bad and wrong and evil and all that stuff. If you haven't realized, every single fucking thing in this world is evil. It's like the way it was created or, shared or whatever, like in some way it had to like abuse some human being that didn't actually want to be there fundamentally. They're doing it because they have to. That's a shitty life to live. And every single person on this planet is living that way. So in order for you to see a different life, a different world, you can't just listen to this podcast. You have to be talking to people about it. You have to have interaction. You have to be studying it. And you have to be removing, again, your judgments of, ooh, what they're saying is bad or evil, or, you know, this, that's not right, or whatever. You have to let go of all of that. And it's a process. It's not just you do it all and you're teachable and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I have to walk through that every fucking week, especially if I'm talking to somebody like Cameron or like Avery or Drake or Jess or Mitch. Seriously, like it's a great thing because you guys challenge me all the time. You guys challenge like, and I realize all of the things that I have accepted, that it's not about whether what you're saying is right or wrong. It's about the fact that I've never even questioned it. Right? It's like I'm holding on to things that like I just accept it as true and that's the way it is. And if you question it, you're a bad person. Right? And I think we're going to do like this, we'll do another episode on like the entirety of the fundamental driver about why you'll never question things is because of social shame. You don't want to be outcasted from your crew. But it's like,
see, but that's the definition of self-interest.
Yeah, exactly.
You're interested in only yourself.
So to broaden,
That's
to expand your vocabulary, I know a lot of the times, you know, we hear that guy has such a big ego. That girl, her ego is fucking, we associate it with the word arrogant, right? But ego, look at it as self-interest only. Self-interest only. Where you're much more egoic than you think. You are a fucking egomaniac. Everybody is.
Egomaniac.
Yeah.
What a word.
That's accurate. And the sooner you realize that and stop judging it, the sooner your life is going to start working. Because you focusing on just yourself is actually what's fucking things up. Because all your relationships are like, I need to be right. And if I look dumb, that's the end of the fucking world. Or, you know, whatever it is, whatever thing you're trying to defend in yourself. The only way you'll actually get to figure out what that is and how to let go of it is by using the tools that we suggested. If you have some other fucking way, my name is Asif Nazar Ali on Facebook. Send me a message, join the Facebook group. Let's get on a call. Let's talk about it. And we'll start sharing what you have. Right, guys? Right? We'll start sharing what you have. If you have a better way, 100%.
It's
no
better.
problem.
Let's see. I'd like to
Depends
see
on what the definition of the word if is.
But the point is, like, each one of us individually, each one of us.
Don't call me with any bullshit that you think is better than TechnoTutor or Destiny. Just go talk to Asif so we can sell you.
Exactly. Cameron's we gotta keep his hands free so he can work on stuff. But you can keep me occupied, no worries. The point being that individually, we've been through it. There's fucking you'll hear this and you'll think I'm like closed-minded or something like that. But go ahead, try me. Like seriously, like just add me on Facebook and message me. But we've tried it all. Fundamentally speaking, there might be, oh no, this one's different than this one. I swear, this one's a different energy clearing method. No, energy clearing in totality. Protesting anything in totality. Whatever it is. Like, trust me, don't waste your fucking time. And if you want to waste your time with that, then just stop listening to these. There's no point. Like,
Yeah, please go away.
Seriously, like, what's the point? Now, if you have fun, whatever, like, sure, enjoy the podcast, no worries, whatever. But in terms of the people who actually want to get their shit together and get all of this together, then it's why we made a fucking website that you can go to, and then it will direct you to everything that you need. Everything you need to sort your shit out. That should be the slogan. No, we have a great slogan. Perfect yourself before you wreck yourself. That's all for me. Jess. Cool.
Yeah, I think next episode we should talk about stuff that might trigger people. That'd be fun.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And for all
I
the
think we're
people,
ready.
and for all the people that watch just to get triggered and to not do anything about it, you should stop watching as well.
Yeah. Literally, we don't want anyone to watch this. Just
And if you're just
stop.
watching this or listening to this,
If you're just listening to this to get value out of it and to do something with it, just fucking
and change
stop.
your life, just fuck off, okay? We've had enough of bullshit. People trying to do the right thing and all that.
Seriously, if you're racist, don't watch this. If you're anti-racist, don't watch this.
Yeah. If you want to live a good life,
Don't watch this.
don't watch this. You're
If
fucked.
you want to change the system, just join the Facebook group. Stop
Yeah,
watching.
exactly. Just skip this part. Stop listening to the future. That's
All
right.
right.
Listen to one podcast in order to join the group, and you don't have to listen to any other podcast after.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Let me plug the link. self-perfected.com. Okay. Good. Now you don't have to listen to anymore. Just go there. You're good. All your problems are solved. That's selling, right? You just tell them all their problems are solved.
That's
Right?
right.
Okay.
Solve all your problems. That should be our next slogan. Let's just keep making new slogans and new T-shirts, and it's always something different.
Yeah. Like, you know,
Self-perfected. Solve all your problems.
like slogan generator. Like that's who we should be. Like just
Yeah.
slogan generators. Solve all your problems. Okay. Cool.
Stop listening.
Watch all the podcasts.
Watch
That
them,
should
but
be
don't
the
listen.
slogan for our podcast. Stop listening.
Oh, that's pretty good. Stop
That's
listening.
excellent. Okay, cool.
Self-perfected podcast. Stop listening.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we'll end it there. Self-perfected. Stop listening.